Good afternoon, everyone. It is 5:03 p.m. on Wednesday, September 23rd, 2020. I call the fiscal year 2020-2021 second public budget hearing special call meeting to order. And we read the required COVID statement, and then we'll have the clerk call the roll. Pursuant to Executive Order 20-193 issued by Governor DeSantis in the City of Homestead, local state of emergency due to COVID-19, this will be a virtual council meeting. The virtual meeting can be viewed live on the City Access channel or live stream at cityofhomestead.com/public meeting. The public may also participate live during the virtual meeting utilizing video conference via WebEx events or via toll-free conference call number. Please go to cityofhomestead.com/calendar for specific details and instructions on participation utilizing video and telephonic conferencing. The city has accepted public comments as part of the virtual meeting, and those comments could have been emailed to public comments at cityofhomestead.com. Those comments are limited to 300 words per comment. Public comments on specific agenda items should include your name, address, and the item you're commenting on, together with your comment. It can be submitted up until noon yesterday and will be reviewed by council as part of the record. General public comments can be submitted up to 30 minutes after the end of the virtual council meeting and will be included in the minutes of this meeting. Further details and instructions concerning public participation in the virtual meeting are referenced in the City of Homestead Virtual Meetings Quick Start Guide located on the city's website. And I certainly hope that other than the meeting later tonight, that is the last time I have to read that statement and we're all back in the same room next month. Hint, hint. Okay. Madam Clerk, you call the roll, please.
Councilwoman Bailey.
Here.
Councilman Ross.
Here.
Councilman Fletcher. Councilman Fletcher.
Present.
Councilwoman Avila.
Present.
Councilman Shelley.
Here.
Vice Mayor Faircloth Staggers.
Present and accounted for.
Mayor Losner.
I'm here as well. Thank you. Are there any additions, deletions, or deferrals from tonight's agenda?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. The City of Homestead's proposed operating millage rate is 6.9810 mils, which is 1.0595 mils higher than the previous year's millage rate of 5.9215 mils, and the proposed voted debt millage rate is 0.4485 mils. The rolled back millage rate is 5.5697 mils. The proposed operating millage rate of 6.9810 mils is 25.34% above the rolled back rate of 5.5697 mils. Madam Manager, is there any further presentation or staff discussion before we open the floor to council?
Mayor, I would just open up the item, just read the item as we did
Sure.
last week. And Mayor and Council, as you know, since the last budget hearing of September 8th, as requested, staff has provided you with additional information on potential funding sources and savings regarding the body camera. But I'll read the core item on the millage as it was read and approved at their September 8th hearing, after which staff is here to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you.
Staff recommends that the Mayor and Council adopt the attached resolution providing 1, a final operating millage rate of 6.9810 per $1,000 of assessed value of ad valorem taxation for real and personal property within the City of Homestead. This millage rate is 1.0595 higher than last year's millage rate of 5.9215 mils and is to be implemented beginning on October 1st, 2020 and ending on September 30th, 2021, fiscal year 2021. And two, a final voted debt millage rate of 0.4485 per 1,000 of assessed value of ad valorem taxation for real and personal property within the city of Homestead. This millage rate is a 0.0315 reduction from last year's debt millage rate of 0.4800 mils and is to be implemented beginning on October 1st, 2020 and ending on September 30th, 2021, fiscal year 2021.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Mr. Attorney, do we need to read by title tab 1 before we proceed?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we do. Tab 1 is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Homestead, Florida, adopting the final operating millage rate of ad valorem taxation and adopting the final millage rate for debt service on the general obligation bonds for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2020 and ending September 30th, 2021.
Thank you. Council, I'll open the floor to your questions or comments.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes, Vice Mayor. Thank you. Good evening.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. So, since our last budget hearing, I've had multiple meetings and conversations with our city manager and staff as it relates to our budget and where we could potentially get a little bit leaner and cut some fat, if there were any fat, because I wanted to make sure that I didn't just leave the onus on staff to go figure it out, but I did my due diligence and put in some of the sweat equity as well, since I am committed to body cameras, but also conscious of the impact that it may have on some of our residents. So in those conversations, our city manager had communicated with me that there was some potential funding for council to consider. So either Kate or Carlos, if you can just talk or mention the funds that you were able to not find, but put on the table for council to consider with the Homestead Miami Speedway. I believe it was the contingency funds as well as the forfeiture funds. So can you mention those respective amounts?
Yes, Vice Mayor, I'd be happy to. So as we talk to you and to the other council members, there's approximately $189,000 in federal forfeiture funds and $150,000 in state forfeiture funds. The state forfeiture funds have a little bit more, they're not as flexible with respect to how they can be used, but our lawyers have opined that we believe we can use those state funds for cameras, and certainly the federal funds we could. The total for those forfeiture funds right now is $339,000. The total cost for the cameras in the first year is approximately $310,000. So with that being said, I have to mention that the forfeiture funds are not a recurring revenue, but that would cover the cost of the cameras in the first year. And with respect to the Speedway, there is a recurring revenue from the Speedway in an amount of approximately $400,000. And those were essentially the numbers that we had given to you, Vice Mayor, and the other members of the council.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cassidy.
Actually, I'll also mention, Vice Mayor, something else the cost as now stated for the cameras personnel would be $417,000, but we suggested moving an existing civilian personnel who works for the city now, maybe moving someone to the police department to cover the civilian expense, and that would reduce the annual cost from $417,000 to $344,000 annually.
Okay, thank you. So just to recap that, as opposed to the 3 positions being funded for the body cameras initiative, you were able to decrease that to 2 positions because you will reassign an existing police officer to that division. Is that correct?
No, we did reduce it to 2, but that would be 2 sworn personnel. We're suggesting we use a civilian personnel to cover that civilian position.
Okay, perfect. So as it relates to the budget, there will be 2 positions
Yes,
as opposed to 3.
that's correct.
Okay. And then you referenced the $400,000 of recurring revenue from the Homestead Miami Speedway. And for full disclosure, I know historically we have utilized that pot of money to help, I guess, balance our at the end of the year. So I wanted to definitely put that on the table. But that is a recurring revenue stream that the council can potentially consider. And the $339,000, cumulatively, or likely of forfeiture funds, we understand that that is non-recurring, and you can't really budget, non-recurring expenses. So for my edification, I had asked staff, like historically, how much money do we generally get from forfeiture funds over the years? So staff provided that information to all of you dating back to 2010 as it relates to the funds that we receive federally and from the state as it relates to the forfeiture funds. And I believe there was 1 year, 2016, that we did receive funds from the state. But ever since 2010, we received funds from the federal government. So historically, we have, for the past couple of years, we have received forfeiture funds. I just wanted to use that as a frame of reference. So I also looked at every single department to include the mayor and council. And in looking at the mayor and council budget, there's a little bit of fat there. In our travel and training, it's about $39,000 collectively for all of us, $6,500 each for council, and then $9,500 for mayor. I'm not sure how much travel and training will be held since we're in a pandemic, but I'm willing to forego my expense item for that. I know with our health insurance, that's a big ticket item. In hardware collectively, there's $21,000. And then in our committee budgets, that's about $60,000 there in our committee budget. I just wanted to kind of put that out there and consider if we want to get a bit leaner, I think that we should lead by example. I know we've cut our ready to fill the budget gap this year, and I think my colleagues for that, but if we want to cut a little bit more, there's a bit more fat there in our budget. So I wanted to be clear that I am not the one that just wants to go off and raise everybody's taxes, for the sake of raising taxes. We have had multiple conversations about our budget, and at each of those hearings, the majority of council had agreed to move forward with adding the body cameras to our budget, giving staff the direction to determine whether or not we had, money to fund it without raising taxes. And in my assessment thus far, I don't see where we can meet that threshold with increasing police officers and adding body cameras. So as I stated at our last meeting, I want to know who's on council willing to meet in the middle to determine how we move forward, as Councilman Roth mentioned at our last meeting, for the sake of public safety. So I know this is a position of principle versus practical. And conceptually, raising taxes, it even hurts me to say or hear. And I sincerely respect my colleagues who would like to move forward with a principal position. But if I may invite you to just look at this practically and what this would translate to the taxpayer. It's a little over 1 point higher than the millage rate last year. And because I trust Carlos's math a little bit better than mine, I am going to, through the chair and through our city manager, if I may ask Carlos a couple of questions.
Please.
Okay, thank you. So, Carlos, if you can just recap.
Yes, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. You can just recap.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, my speaker, I'm sorry. Oh. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, loud and clear, loud and clear.
Okay, sorry.
The proposed millage rate, what would that translate to annually for a resident, well, not even a resident, but for a property with I want to say a $400,000 taxable value?
You're saying as it currently stands.
Yes, as it currently stands.
Okay, we had said, I believe for a value of 100,000, it was $77 per year. For 200,000, it was 155. So for 400,000 would be about $310 additional per year. And if somebody was paying that through an escrow, you're talking about $26 additional per month.
$26 additional per month. So that's from a practical perspective, and that is where I am right now, even though it sounds horrible to say raising taxes, and I recognize we're in the midst of a pandemic. But if you look at it practically, it's $26 per month for those of us who pay via escrow like me, or $310 per year, as Councilman Roth said, for public safety, for body cameras to increase transparency and accountability in a time where cities and states around the world are determining ways they can be more transparent for their constituents, as well as additional police officers, an area that we have needed to address for several years, and we have not. When Councilman Burgess mentioned it last year to raise taxes, I said no, because I didn't really think about it as much as I have now. So I would invite my colleagues to really think about the return on investment that our city would yield as it relates to moving forward with passing the millage rate as it stands now. Because I'm willing to meet in the middle, I am willing to compromise with my colleagues, and I welcome your feedback on how we can bring this forward. But I invite you to really consider what this looks like and how it will be felt each month. $26 for more police officers, what we sorely need, as well as body cameras for accountability and transparency. So with that, I'll yield now and invite my colleagues to weigh in with the opportunity to further discuss. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Mayor, if I may.
Sure, Councilwoman, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I wanted to first thank Vice Mayor for bringing this item to the forefront of our discussion for many weeks now and giving us all the opportunity to reflect on it and find ways to make it work. And I have done a lot of reflection, and I am in support of both agenda items, both the cameras and the additional police officers. However, I have to say that I don't think we have enough information at this time to make a final decision. Although I am wholeheartedly in support on the grounds for both, increasing the police officers and adding the cameras to uniform, I just don't feel that even after the discussions on the dais and with staff, I'm not clear. I'm still left with two concerns. Number one, raising the millage in a time when even if we were going to leave the rates the same, taxes are still going to go up across the board, especially for those business owners and commercial property owners that are severely struggling right now. And that's simply because values went up from 2019 to 2020. And secondly, having body cameras, for some, it's just a uniform accessory. It makes sense. It shows our commitment for transparency. But after speaking with some community members, not many, but some, they were able to shed some light on the aspect of how our city is so great at the community policing that does go on, where people feel comfortable approaching and discussing matters with police officers in private, or police officers being able to, engage with their community. And having cameras on 24/7 is something that, it should be a standard that everybody can live by, but maybe that's not something that our community, that our residents, that our voters, that our taxpayers are going to align with in terms of or be in agreement with. So I've been trying to think of a way where we can do this and still and have the full support of our taxpayers and our citizens. And after many attempts of trying to engage with the community, I reached out to city manager's office. I reached out to the social media. I tried to contact a third-party surveyor, trying to engage and do polls and try to get information. And I was left kind of, in a gap of information. And so it made me wonder, like, why am I lacking so much input from the community? And I was wrestling with that and just trying to use my own perspective to make this decision. And although I'm grateful that my family and I are all okay and we're well and we're working and we're all alive, not many of our citizens are in that same boat. I think a lot of us are in what I would call survival mode. And what I mean by that is, for example, try to think back to a time where if you were ever lucky enough to face such an adversity and overcome it, think back to a time when your bank balance was so low that you didn't even want to look at it. Or a time when your mail was just stacked up so high you didn't want to open the envelopes because you didn't have the money or the means to pay the bill. And maybe that's one of the reasons why we didn't get the response to the 10% cap on the millage rate. Maybe that's why we were lacking that overwhelming, pushback on this agenda item. And so taking that into consideration and everything in addition to COVID, even if we were able to implement a millage rate that worked for this year to include these items, next year we'd still be having a similar predicament. I expect commercial property values to tank a little bit next year, significant enough to where we're going to be in another gap, trying to fill a gap. And to support the camera project and the police, staff that we're going to be adding, in addition to trying to bring back some of the things that we already cut, for this coming year, we're going to be having the same discussion. So I think we have to consider maybe for lack of a better term, maybe a 3-year COVID recovery plan where we can phase in these types of things. Consider this year deciding that as a consensus that we do want these programs, but let's see how we can overcome the costs with crunching our budget, and then next year seeing how we do with the tax values on the commercial properties. And at the same time, we'll also give ourselves the opportunity to see what are the grants that everybody's talking about for funding these programs, and really consciously give staff the directive to do so and apply for them and bring them to us. And it also would give us the opportunity to put this decision for the cameras in the hands of the voters. Let's call for a referendum and put it on the November ballot for next year. And that'll give us, by 2023, the opportunity to include it in that budget and roll it out if that's what the taxpayers want. And so, as much as I support the items, and with all due respect to our vice mayor and wanting to support this project, this initiative, I have to kind of look at it from the perspective of what's going to come after. And so that's where I'm at right now, but I do look forward to listening to public comments and gathering some more information and input, but I'll leave it for that for now. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Appreciate it.
Mayor, if I may, if no one.
Sure, Vice Mayor. Thank you.
Yes. So I completely understand your position, Councilwoman Avila. I'm just not clear on the information that you are lacking in order to make the decision. I'm not sure if staff hasn't provided the information, but I'm not sure what information you are lacking. And as it relates to input from the community, we have a very engaged constituency. And I was surprised that I didn't see or hear an outcry from the community as it relates to increasing the millage rate. Perhaps probably because many of them understand that this is for public safety, and perhaps they're comfortable with that. So we've had contentious items during this pandemic, and we heard from our residents that wanted us to not support or support various items. But for this, there wasn't a referendum against it. Not sure who you're speaking to, but we have taxpayers on both sides of this, those I'm sure support and those who are against. And I haven't heard an outcry for any that are against. There's a lot of hypotheticals. What can happen next week? What can happen next year? And I'm no longer going to push the can down the road because I'm not comfortable or afraid to make a very important decision as this. And I don't take this decision lightly because I'm very sensitive to the needs of those who are struggling to make ends meet, because that has been my life story, as many of you know. So I'm not completely oblivious to that because, I now have a stable job and I haven't been impacted by COVID. So in light of what you said, and I completely respect your position, but I feel that we need to move forward now. And I think that there's light at the end of the tunnel because money will eventually come. But how long are we going to wait to increase our police force to be able to further support our community? How long are we going to wait in order to ensure that we provide a public safety that is for the greater good of the entire community? This is just not about the Black community. This is about the entire community. This is about the police officers. If we would have had body cameras, which is not, an accessory to their uniform, some of our police officers, the position that they're in now, if we have body cameras. So this is a public safety initiative for the greater good of the community. And I would like to hear more from my colleagues and what your positions are so that we can really flush this out. If we have to scale down the amount of police officers, if we have to discuss the body cameras a little bit more as it relates to the amount, but we can't not stop this right now or kick the can down the street. I commend the city of Florida City, who had their public hearing last night and approved their body cameras. They're moving forward. They're being proactive. They're getting in the front of this. They're not just looking at statistics and saying, there's nothing to support it. So we don't want anything to come out because we didn't move forward with body cameras. I am a proponent of being proactive as opposed to reactive. Bless our police department. They're a fine group of men and women who have done exceptionally well with less, but it's time to give them what they deserve, and it's time to make a decision for the greater good of the community and get ahead and be proactive on this issue. So with that, I tee it back to you, Mayor, for further discussion.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, and I would look to comments from any other members of council. I can't see any indication here, so just shout out if you'd like to join the conversation. Is that Councilman Fletcher?
Yes, sir.
Please. Hi.
Good, Mr. Mayor, colleagues. I too, have had quite a few telephone calls and emails in regards to, current budget process and where we're currently looking to move forward to. I did have a couple of questions before I get into my comments. The city staff. So I know that I've looked at and looked for grant fundings that are currently, most of the grants are taken for year 2020. I just wanted to make sure that as a staff that we are being proactive and are preparing our grant applications for the upcoming years to help support and offset the cost of these initiatives that we're trying to move forward with today. Ms. McCaffrey, do we know if we're making those strides, that headway And so we can be at the front of the line come next budget year for the federal government or the state government that we're requesting these funds, and we're being proactive in that.
Yeah, of course, Councilman, I can talk about the grants a little bit, and I can assure you that we will do everything we can to aggressively pursue any grant opportunities. Just to give you an idea of some of the things that are out there, as of right now, we do not know of any funds that are available. We are hoping that before the end of the calendar year for 2020, there may be a Department of Justice body-worn camera implementation program. It would require matching funds, but that is one we'll keep a close eye on and we'll go after. And there's also grants that we typically go after and get. For example, Department of Justice JAG grants. Typically, we get about $45,000 to $75,000 a year. And actually, I think it just came in today or yesterday. I think we awarded $49,000 on our last DOJ JAG grant. But that money has historically been used to offset police overtime for specific areas that the police address when they have a problem, for example, with burglaries or robberies or vehicle thefts in certain neighborhoods or certain areas. And that, as I say, that's the Edward Byrne Memorial that's always been used to offset police overtime. So that would probably incur overtime costs if it went to the cameras. But likely that money could be used for cameras. There's also an FDLE JAG pass-through grant from about $7,000 to $10,000. That grant application opens in March. The one I just talked about, the DOJ JAG grant, is usually between February and April when we would apply for that. And then there's the Department of Justice COPS application, also typically in March, and the amount of that changes from year to year.
Okay, I appreciate the feedback, and I took those as well. And, I even looked at specifically what was provided to body cameras. Miami-Dade County was provided $1 million, I believe it was last year, from that Edwin Byrne grant, and several other large organizations were provided a lot of money, but smaller communities like ours were in the $40,000 to $70,000 range. So understanding that we won't get it all, but it's something to help offset those costs. I appreciate looking into that and continued dialogue to help try and offset these costs. Secondly, when it comes to the staff, again, I just want to make sure that we're doing absolutely the best we can with what we have without trying to hire additional personnel for a program that we don't know what it's going to take yet. I think we've had discussions where our police staff believe it's going to take, 3 individuals to run this program. My mindset is that, again, we don't know how big this is going to be. So how can we hire people to address something that we really don't know what it is yet? So I would just be thoughtful in what we're doing to ensure that we're not overhiring, for one, and secondly, we're making sure that the program, maybe we can look at it by providing services from within right now until we determine what that is, and then we make a mid-year change, kind of like an unfunded mandate. But at the same time, if we're going to move forward with this, I think we have to be smart and ensure that we know exactly what we're getting into before we just go out there and start hiring people. With that being said, I did also happen to have a very good conversation with the majority of the Keys Gate delegates last week. And I can tell you they were all initially, again, I think it was the way the message was put out initially with the 10 mills, that we didn't provide a great, explanation of why we did that. Certainly I saw the mayor and some of our other colleagues respond to some of those emails to try and get some clarity in there. But I can tell you that the majority of the delegates in the Keys Gate area support body cameras. However, they don't feel like they should be taxed for them. They think there should be a way to find funds other than on the backs of the taxpayers to help run this program. Additionally, they're all very happy with the services that the police department provides, but they were more than willing to increase their taxes to get more police officers out in the field and supporting this community. So, again, nobody is against the body camera process. They think that it would be a good thing. However, they don't feel like it should fall on their backs to pay for it, especially in this current time frame. However, each and every one of them were willing to pay that little extra to ensure we had more police officers on the street out there protecting and serving the community. I will yield and withhold comments or suggestions from my other colleagues. I'm open to how we move forward with this. But again, I think we've had an opportunity for the past 5 years to look at this process, and I'll use the phrase that the Vice Mayor used. You know, we have kicked the up, and we either got to do that again or we got to stop and do something. So with that, I'll yield my time to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Fletcher. And if I might, before we go forward with other council questions or commentary, let me pose a question to the manager and staff, whoever needs to answer, that's related to some of the issues that Councilman Fletcher raised. And I understand that every grant is different, but generally speaking, once we budget for body cams from our general fund and sign the contracts to procure the system, does that generally preclude us from even qualifying to apply for the grant? Aren't most grants for starting a new program or buying equipment or leasing equipment that you don't now have? And again, I understand that, you know, there'll be, you know, some new and innovative funding vehicles out there, but generally speaking, is that accurate? That once we commit to that out of our own pocket, we may not be able to avail ourselves of grant money?
Mayor, we did look into that, and we can't say with 100% certainty, but yes, it appears that for the Department of Justice grants, we believe that if they were budgeted items, we could not go after the grant.
And another detail there is that if we do this, we're locked in for 5 years. This is something we're going to have to budget for 4 years after this coming budget year as well. Correct, it's a 5-year lease contract for the cameras.
It is a 5-year agreement, and as you know, you're not voting on the agreement tonight. It's just about funding it.
Correct.
So we don't know exactly what the contract would look like and what would happen each year, and what could happen after the first year or the second year.
But generally speaking, if we budgeted it and signed the agreement, that could likely preclude most of the traditional grant funding sources.
Yes, we believe that is a potential, yes.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you. Council members?
Mayor, if I may?
All right, Councilwoman Bailey, sure. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I asked the same question because I was afraid of the same thing with the grants. But another thing to remember is that most of those grants would only help us with a small percentage of it for 1 year. That's what I found. So to wait an entire year to just get a little bit of help, I don't think that's a make or break part of it. For me, I cannot think of anything else that I would even consider raising taxes for right now, except for public safety. With the current national climate, the overwhelming uncertainty, I think it's now more than ever that our department needs to know that we support them and that our community knows that we hear them. So, you know, you've heard Austin turn thoughts and prayers into policy. I really feel like this is an opportunity to do just that. if we can provide our department with the resources that they need to successfully continue serving our city, I'm truly sympathetic and know that we've all suffered and struggled this year, and it's precisely for that reason that I think that this is an important thing to move forward with. So that's where I am right now. I'm also in favor of considering less additional officers and the body cameras and seeing what next year looks like. If we can use the Speedway funds, forfeiture funds to fund the camera program, then reduce the millage rate back. But to push this off another year, I really don't want to see that happen. So that's where, let me ask you one question. For the Speedway funds for this year though, for staff, they've been used already, right? We're not looking at that for this year, correct?
They are something else, yes.
Okay. And the forfeiture funds as well?
No, the forfeiture funds are there.
The forfeiture funds are there?
That's it. Yes.
And that's all been taken into consideration with this last millage proposal?
Last year, so no, what we wrote tonight did not take into account.
Well, we've got a lot of background interference. Everybody else mute yourself if you're not speaking.
So just to clarify, can you look at what are we looking at if we're able to use a safe amount of forfeiture funds? I think that the least we've ever seen was $70,000, and that only happened 1 or 2 years. If we can get a fair number with the forfeiture funds and the Speedway funds, where does that leave us?
Well, forfeiture funds, as you know, and as was spoken about by the Vice Mayor, it does vary from year to year. We're not guaranteed that it would cover it. What we have there now certainly would cover it for the first year. The $400,000 from the Speedway would be a recurring revenue source, but as also mentioned, that has been sort of a fail-safe for us in past years. But that money is a recurring source of revenue.
Okay, so if we don't touch either of those, if we were to discuss 5 officers and the body cameras, then
we'll tell you, 30 seconds, we'll tell you where we would be at with that.
You want me to speak?
Yeah.
Councilwoman Bailey? For the body cameras, and I'm kind of including the reduction in the contract, a slight reduction in the contract, and for 5 police officers, the impact to a taxpayer with a $100,000 value would be $51.54 annually, and if you divide that by 12, you're talking about a little under $5 per month. Again, for a property value that's $100,000.
And the property value breakdown that you sent regarding the city of Homestead, the average was around $100,000, correct?
Yeah, the indicate that residential values, the median property value, the average property value is anywhere between 97,000 and 107,000. So again, using the 100,000 makes it easier for the math and also makes it's in line with what the average would be.
Okay, thank you. And that's all relative, obviously. If you're, so $51.50 for 5 additional officers and moving forward with the body cameras, and hopes of getting, probability of getting some grants for next year and being able to bring that back down. I can still support this. I would like to see it go forward. I understand completely, Councilwoman Avila. I agree. I think we're all in survival mode, and I worry also about the residents, especially in the Southwest, that have not come out to speak on this. And I know that a lot are just dealing with incredible amounts of stress and things that we've never seen before. But again, I feel like that is the reason that we should make sure that we're looking at public safety first. That's all I have for now, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Either Mr. Roth or Councilman Shelley or Roth wish to join the conversation?
I do. Mayor, thank you. But I'd like to actually wait for the public to make their comments, and then I'll finish up. I don't have much to say really anymore.
Okay. Thank you. Councilman Shelley?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I mean, I think my position is the same as it was the last meeting. I had a conversation with staff. I asked them to look into ways in which things we could cut, similar to the Vice Mayor. What would it take to get to either body cameras and additional police officers with cutting of existing items in the budget. And it ended up being a pretty severe exercise. I mean, you're talking about shutting down almost every single community center that we have. You're talking about shutting down all of the sports fields, baseball fields, soccer fields, and even that didn't get us to the full amount for just body cameras alone. It then required laying off all of our part-time employees. And then we got finally enough to pay for body cameras and maybe 1 or 2 more police officers on top of that, but not enough to cover, both. So, I mean, from that exercise, it was determined that it would be severe cuts, severe quality of life issues in order to ultimately find some way in the budget in its current form to pay for those 2 items. And so that made this, discussion and exercise much more difficult. I know the Vice Mayor has presented a couple options as well that would get us through at least year 1. As long as I don't have to raise the millage rate, in whatever budget we ultimately pass, I'm supportive, although knowing that, even if we were to cover these expenses, and primarily this is talking body cameras, I don't think there's enough dollars to be saved to also fund police officers. You're still, any budget that would be approved to fund that in year 1, but with a 5-year commitment for these cameras over time, would ultimately require potential raising of the millage rate next year, ultimately in order to continue honoring the terms of any contract that we ultimately would enter into after this budget was passed. And so I think, that causes some pause as far as the responsibility issue of how to move forward. But it does buy us some time. It does accomplish a goal in which we potentially pass a budget that does not raise the millage rate this tax year, when people are ultimately the most affected by COVID, and gives us time to see what type of response or what type of issue COVID ultimately causes long term for both our tax rate and the pocketbook of our residents. But it also sets it up for a make or break for the next budget cycle, where at that point you either have to find additional funding sources, property values have to go up to generate enough property taxable value to make up that difference, what we had to plug the hole with potential speedway and or forfeiture funds, or you at that point have no choice but to raise the millage rate to honor the commitment that would have been made for those cameras. So my position is still the same, which is I'm going to vote. I'm willing to vote for a budget that doesn't raise the millage rate. I'm not willing to vote for a budget that does raise the millage rate. And so that's kind of where I am at this point. I also reiterated kind of what the mayor had asked the question on, and my understanding from staff was the same, which was, if we make a full court press for grants, if we ultimately enter into a contract before we apply for those grants or we get those grants, that it does then foreclose the potential of at least paying for the cost of the cameras. I don't know that we'll find grants for personnel, but we may find for grants for personnel as well. And so that's one of the considerations as well. I mean, if for some reason we do pass a budget tonight that doesn't raise the millage rate and we don't decide to allocate non-recurring revenue sources to the to a program, then ultimately, my direction would be, and I've heard from some of my colleagues similarly, to be a full court press, to find those grants, to make every effort to make finding monies for body cameras a priority. And I would support that, depending on how this goes. But that's kind of where I'm now, Mayor. I'd like to hear public comment and may have some further discussion or comments later. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Shelley. Let me go back, and I'd like to springboard on probably comments that each and every one of you have made thus far. And I will start with the initial comments by the Vice Mayor. And I think back to the fact that we had 2 multi-hour budget workshops over the last several weeks where I did most of the talking and asked most of the questions. And of course, I've gotten into greater detail about ways to save money in meetings with staff. And I will agree with the Vice Mayor. I believe there is still fat in this budget. And those who have known me and listened to me and followed me through my career in and out of public office, I've always said that the elected officials need to set the example. And in that regard, I agree. There are cuts that could be made as to each of our individual budgets, travel and training, what have you. I notified staff several weeks ago in writing that for the coming budget year, that I would personally, I want to contribute the same amount to my city-provided health insurance that any other similarly situated city employee would do. And, I don't know who of those among us avail themselves of that city benefit or not. That's what I'm choosing to do. And not to demean the value if all of us did that. It sends the message, and I've used the analogy, the coins in the couch cushions. But beyond that, I believe there is fat, and I have suggested, and it's been met with their absolute discretion at the staff level, that I'm concerned about being top-heavy with administration, not only in City Hall, but in the police department as well. I have suggested that perhaps council is top-heavy with assistants. I've suggested that perhaps we have one too many assistant city managers. I've suggested that perhaps the CRA position and the economic development office should perhaps be combined. Now that's real money, and those are hard decisions that we can make to create this transparency and trust that is said to come with camera systems, as well as help to underwrite the cost of additional police officers. Again, when we've had these discussions, when there are a couple of part-time positions in the police department that are paid $80,000 a year on a part-time basis, I think it's time to evaluate the habit of rehiring those who finished their careers here, then got to do 8 years in the drop program, and then get to come back and make that kind of money, which is a lot more than most of our employees make working 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. So when we talk about there being fat in the budget, I think there's plenty of fat in the budget if we wanted to have a real honest and forthright conversation about that. Now, on the philosophy of rating forfeiture and the the surplus from the Speedway. The numbers that I hear being thrown around tonight with respect to forfeiture money must be an accumulation of unspent money from prior years as well as whatever hasn't been spent this year. Because as I look at the chart that was distributed, we only got, in round numbers, 48 from one source and 73 from another source, as opposed to last year, almost $306,000, where that same source this year only produced 48. Again, I think that's very dangerous to go down that road and deplete a fund that seems to have a trend of going downward very, very quickly. And when I was on council many years ago, we recognized that, a lot of forfeiture income was nice to have to supplement our budget, but it meant we had a crime problem or were involved in a lot of cases that produced those kinds of windfalls. Either we no longer participate in those kinds of cases to the extent that we did even a couple of years ago, or the police department has really put a lid on that kind of crime within our city limits that produces that kind of money. And I'm concerned that, we can't lose sight of the fact that I think we've got a lot of challenges ahead of us. We have three significant lawsuits that, without going into whether or not we will be liable, they are certainly going to result in incurring potentially tens of thousands of dollars in attorney's fees. And those are the suits that we know about. So that's why I'm concerned about depleting that Speedway budget for body cams, as well as I agree with the councilwoman, and I've had this same conversation with staff, that I believe that we're going to see a huge rush to the tax assessor's office after next year's trim notice by commercial landlords to appeal their assessments. From where I sit here today, I really think that based on the income approach, values are going to go down and property owners are going to be really proactive at doing that. So I don't want to start spending money based on commercial values today, but I see I have a personal concern about them really being depleted next year. We talk about an engaged populace. I did get social media posts, emails, phone calls, and by and large, they were reactionary to the proposed 10 mills. As time went on, it was about the times we live in and the uncertainty, and any tax rate increase in the tax rate is not a good move at this point. But what I saw most of all was still the basic concern of other priorities. And above, when is Canal Drive going to be finished? There's still the issue that far and above outweighs the commentary I've gotten about additional police officers or body cams, is that the appearance of our city and issues of code enforcement. And we're going to have to sit down one day soon and have a frank discussion as to whether the primary issue is the code or the lack of a good code or lack of code enforcement officers. We haven't addressed that at all in this budget. The next priority is that our trash and our bulk waste gets picked up when it's supposed to and not left in a trail down the street. That's what the people who contact me are really concerned about. Those daily issues that also affect quality of life, and I believe property values, and we can't lose sight of that. And I'm going to have to side with and agree with Councilman Shelley, and I want to again reiterate his point that someday we may really need to go to the taxpayers and talk about a tax hike, and we need to have room to do that. So I would welcome the opportunity to vote for a budget that does not include a tax hike. I'd like to find a way to fund the body camera system sooner rather than later. But I do want to point out one thing. People who advocate for additional police officers solely use the population metric as the basis for supporting additional officers. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. If you look at the recap, the audit of the last year's budget, the charts there show that clearly, while the population line is always trending upward, the number of police calls has dramatically trended downward, as has the incidence of arrest as a percentage of those police calls. And no one, not staff, not one member of the public, not one member of the police department has ever indicated to me during this process that they are at a breaking point, that the failure to staff puts their lives at risk in any way, or that our response time is reduced. None of that has been brought before me, and I would have to suspect that if that were the case, that as in other instances, and I guess tonight it would be figuratively rather than literally, but we would have members of the police force and their families lined up against the back wall, so to speak, in support of that action. So I have again, and I think that we really need to analyze, and I'm not saying we don't need additional police officers. I don't know what that number is, but I don't think we should be relying solely on the metric of an increase in population. And as I said, I want to find a way to accomplish all of those items, but I want to find a way to accomplish it without imposing any additional tax burden on anyone above and beyond the difference between the rollback rate in this year. This is a unique, peculiar, and special year in so many different ways. My scale says that it's not fair to assess an increase in the tax rate for this coming budget year. So, unless you want to jump in, Councilman Roth, we'll open it up to public discussion, to public comments.
Actually, Mayor, I just wanted to make a 1-minute comment. May I?
Yes, sure. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to say I am willing to stand with you as it relates to the health, withdrawing from the health coverage. That is a nice benefit, and it's very pricey, and that's why I referenced it earlier about, the amount that is allocated for us. I'm willing to lay that all on the line for public safety. So I'm willing to stand with you with that. I also wanted to mention that in Florida City, and looking at their agreement, they have a 3-year agreement. So why do we have to lock in with a 5-year agreement when their agreement is 3 years? And is it possible for us to, and this is something to think about, you don't have to answer it now, is it possible for us to defer the first year in this agreement as opposed to paying up front the first year? I'm sure there can be opportunities to refinance this over the course of the agreement. And truthfully, our city we balanced the budget out of reserve for years. And what we probably should have done, shame on us that have been sitting there, there should have been probably incremental adjustments over the couple of years as opposed to waiting to now. We have to make very tough decisions, and I respect everyone's position. But as Councilwoman Avila said at the last meeting, I'm going to continue to go with my heart on this one. I'm not wavering from that. I'm going with my heart. And at this time, I'll pivot back to you, Mayor, so that we can pivot to public comment.
Thank you. I want to clarify, I'm not walking away from that benefit. I am contributing to payment for that benefit.
I'm willing to do that as well.
Yeah. We'll be real clear on that one.
Okay.
Big difference, big difference. So, I guess, IT department, do we have members of the public in line to speak on this matter?
Yes, Mayor. So first we have Lorenzo Toledo.
Esteemed members of the City of Homestead Commission, my name is Lorenzo Toledo. I live at 991 Northeast 36th Avenue in Homestead, Florida. I'm a retired 30-year veteran of federal and local law enforcement. On my prior post, my last post, prior to retiring, I was assigned as a group supervisor for the Violent Gangs Task Force. The Homestead Police Department, led by Chief Al Rowe, has done an outstanding job in protecting our citizens. I had the pleasure of working with Homestead PD on several occasions where violent offenders were taken off the street. Their dedication and professionalism were always impressive. Homestead is doing a great job with very little resources to keep its citizens safe, but they do need more officers on their staff. In 1992, Homestead had approximately 22,000 residents with 98 police officers on staff. That's roughly one officer for every 224 citizens. In 2020, we are quickly approaching 90,000 residents with a small increase of only 15 police officers. That's one officer for roughly 783 citizens. Please let that sink in a little. With a crime rate of 43 for 1,000 residents, Homestead has one of the highest crime rates in America compared to all communities of all sizes. One's chance of becoming a victim of either violent or property crime here is 1 in 23. Let's not forget the city that borders us as well. We have high crime areas in Naranja and Florida City. I know this is a time of uncertainty and there's a lot of racial tensions, but we need to go back to the days of community policing where there was more positive interaction between law enforcement and the public. To accomplish that, I really believe we need more staff. I understand that taxes will be raised to pay for these endeavors, but what better reason is there to raise taxes if not for the protection of the resident safety? The city is growing exponentially, commercially and residentially, with large warehouses and businesses looking to establish roots here. They will also be contributing needed financial resources to the city. With respect to the body cams, there are many studies that show both advantages and disadvantages of their effectiveness in policing. There's also large costs associated with the purchase, and they constantly have to be maintained to function as intended. The body cam issue should be discussed at a later date and separate from the agenda of hiring additional law enforcement. Note, there is federal funding that can provide for equipment requests by local police departments. One such program is HIDA, High Intensity Drug Traffic Area, that's run by the Office of National Drug Control Policy, and they're always providing monies for departments for equipment. Let's approve the added police officers, which we desperately need to keep our number one resource in Homestead safe, our citizens. Thank you for your consideration. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out tonight.
Mayor, just want to announce that whoever wants to speak, please raise your hand using the software, or if you're calling in, to do a *3 to raise your hand. Next, we have John Holmes, PBA rep.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Okay, how everybody doing on the council? Hello, my name is John Holmes. I represent the PBA and the officers of the City of Homestead Police Department. And I am also a citizen of the City of Homestead and a taxpayer. I would like to first say that I hear you guys on the council and I hear you say you talk to all the citizens. But not once have I heard one of you say that you've asked one of the officers how they feel about certain agendas that you guys are doing when it comes to the police department. I think that raising taxes after so long was a great idea. However, to charge the citizens of Homestead for the body cameras, I think is wrong. The reason for that is that data at the Homestead Police Department does not show that we need cameras at this time. Not saying that the Homestead Police Department or the PBA is against cameras. We just don't feel like the data is showing that we need it at this time. Over the last 5 years, we have had 5 internal investigations, and those investigations came from officers who saw someone doing something wrong, and they reported it. And the chief did his job in doing investigations, and either those officers were fired or disciplined. And when we talk about transparency and accountability, we have a chief that does exactly what he needs to do as far as accountability and discipline. Al Roll is one of the best chiefs in the state of Florida. And I know that there are grants out there. And instead of charging the citizens for these cameras, why don't we do exactly what Councilwoman Avila said? I think that is a great idea. To wait, see what the charges and the things, how this is gonna affect us, and then go forward with the cameras. And have we thought about the privacy of these cameras to our citizens? When we respond to their houses, those cameras have no privacy. We're going to be invading people's privacy. That's all our privacy. So we're going to be showing their houses, their addresses, where they live, and that's public records. I think that we should think about it. I think that you guys should ask the police officers, how do they feel about this? And get that in. We're not against cameras, not at all. We're not against it. However, I hope that you guys could sit back and wait. We need officers. We need feet on the ground. I would prefer feet on the ground over a camera any day, because I know that man that's standing next to me, he's going to grab somebody. He's going to be able to protect me. He's going to be able to do the things. I mean, cameras don't shoot back. Cameras don't protect officers. Officers protect officers. And that's my belief. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments.
Next, we have Andrika.
Hi, good evening. My name is Andrika, and I'm not going to disclose my address, but I just want to say that the public servants have failed us by saying we should go and look up grants when they have been in place since 2015 for body cameras. And this is a public safety issue, like Patricia Faircloth mentioned. So, as I say, the public servants are here to ensure that the public's money is spent as efficiently as possible and that programs are provided effectively without discrimination or prejudice, with transparency and without waste of money or resources. So, to get answers to the who, what, where, who's, what's, and why's, we can explore body-worn pilot programs. And these programs, what they do is, they'll give you 10 body cameras in the apartment, and it's like a 6-month study, and it allows the police department to evaluate the benefits of the technology, and cost as well. So, I mean, that's an issue with me as well, because upon doing my research, I didn't see that option being explored. It's just something, it's a test to see what the cost would be. Because we want everyone to be protected here, the officers as well as the citizens. And that's it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next, we have Elizabeth Miller.
Yes, hello. I've lived in the city of Homestead for over 9 years now, and my husband is a pastor in the community, and we have just a lot of experience in listening to a lot of people's stories coming from all kinds of places here in Homestead, east side, west side, and my own personal engagements with the police officers. I've had tremendous people in the police force that I can say are great. And then I've also had people that I've been tremendously disappointed by personally, as well as I would equate that also with people's experiences by and large, not just my own, but what I hear from your constituents out here. So I, first of all, want to say I really appreciate, Mayor, when you speak of, hey, let's cut the fat. I think that should be what we do regardless of the time. We should always be good stewards of the tax-paying money, and to be able to look at the resources that the city has. Always ask, is this necessary? Do we need to continue to have this person on our payroll? Who needs to be cut? Why are they here? It's not a personal thing. It's just actually looking at what's best to do for the city. That's the purpose. So I find it disconcerting to hear that that's not happening already. And then certainly I would like that to be considered when I think about, who funds the cameras. Yes, please look at all the places where the fat can be cut. And that alone speaks a lot to our ability to trust you. If you are going to take care of our money well, we will in turn want to trust you. And I think the cameras is a big sign of transparency and trust. If cameras are there, it protects the police officers and it protects the residents. It's both ways. If we have nothing to hide, we can be seen for what we are fully. But I definitely would like to see intentional cuts anywhere where possible so that we can put on the table something that would help grow the trust in our community. That is very much what I see is needed in our community at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Tawana Akins.
Hi, good evening.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Give us your name and address, please.
Hello, I'm Tawana Akins, residing at 415 Southwest 12th Avenue, Homestead, Florida. I'm just calling in support of body cameras because they are needed. They are needed simply because one death is enough. I sit and I listen to Krista Foster speaking of how a Homestead officer murdered her brother, and we need the cameras to prove what's really going on so that all of these families that have been victimized, not all police are bad, but all of the families that have been victimized, you can see and have the evidence of why these certain officers are still on the force after committing these crimes. I feel that it's good for the police officers and it's also good for everyday citizens. So I am in total support of body cameras to protect everyone involved and to make our world a better place. We know what we're living in the age of cameras anyway. Cameras are everywhere. So if people are filming anyway, why can't the police have body cameras on them so that all of us can remain protected? I know that it will display some addresses and cause other things to happen, but in reality, one life lost is enough life lost. So let's do what we can to get these body cameras on these police officers to protect us all. Thank you all, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Next, we have True Homestead.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is Romero. My address is 2040 Southeast 19th Street. And I was going to reserve my address just like everyone was doing because of certain things that have happened to me since our last conversation at our last hearing where I gave you guys options to entertain. I've been reached out by certain superiors of the Homestead PD to inform me that they're not happy with my decision. I have police officers coming to my house, okay, and forcing my wife to give up property where they have no jurisdiction over, okay? And then I wasn't going to call today because of all the issues that were happening, but guess what I got today? I got a citation from your code enforcement from Officer Brian Alejandro, okay, who apparently cited me for bulk trash that did not belong to me. Now, this is why we need body cams, because if Officer Alejandro would have seen I had a dumpster in front of my house, why would I put bulk trash out in front when I have a dumpster in front of my house? Clearly, he was not there. clearly someone sent them. Okay? So this is why we need additional gear for the police officers when it comes to issues such as this. Because right now it's he said, she said. But if we had that lovely camera blinking, it'll be a whole different story. And trust me, officers will act completely different. You see, this is why people don't speak up at these hearings, because the retaliation is real. And I have a piece of paper in my hand to prove it. Okay? I ask you guys to entertain those options because the retaliation is real. And I am glad that Homestead PD and the PDA is on this conversation. Okay? Because just like he said, we shouldn't tax the taxpayers. No. We should eliminate certain positions at Homestead PD and promote officers who are quality of the position to take over. That's your budget right there. We need it. And I ask you guys to please entertain those options because people in Homestead are tired, and we are tired of your lies and all of this forcing around that you're spinning people's wheels and stuff. And obviously, it's obvious you're all going to vote no. Okay? So let's cut the crap and move forward, and let's get it done, please. Because if people are afraid to come to these meetings to speak up, this is why. Okay? So council, mayor, vice mayor, how are you? Thank you for this opportunity, and you guys have a good night.
Thank you, Ramiro. Next speaker.
Willie Wumble.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Mr. Wumble. Good evening.
Good evening, sir. Very robust conversation. And Mayor, if I recall correctly, there was a need for 10 police officers 5 years ago. That was the excuse at the time as to why body cameras were not placed before the people. If I am correct, Mr. Mayor, there was a significant decrease in crime prior to the last election. If so, there isn't a need for 10 additional police officers. Though it has been said what the costs associated with body cameras would be, the budget does not give the man hours and the dollars that could be saved as a result of the implementation of body cameras. Because we believe in supporting our officers, cameras have been proven to reduce the number of false citizen complaints against our officers, reducing the amount of time associated with completing police reports, and a huge reduction in litigation costs. As I have said many times before in the Chamber of City Hall, there is no tangible return in spending money on attorneys fighting lawsuits. Police forfeiture funds could also be used for the purpose of body camera crimes in which those funds are gathered are crimes against the citizens of Homestead and should be utilized for the benefit of the citizens of Homestead. It was stated that the rate of incidents have not changed, but their costs have. How many hundreds of thousands of dollars have been used on attorney fees? If you want to help the taxpayers of the city of Homestead, if you really want to help the taxpayers, reduce the fees associated by Homestead electricity. Bring to a conclusion the building of East 8th Street. Recover the $325,000 that was returned to Dade County to monitor traffic that has not improved. Recovering money spent on unused gym memberships that went unused. You're right, Mr. Mayor. We should look for cutting expenses. We should look for reducing utility rates. We should do everything to put every tax dollar back in the pockets of those taxpayers. We should also seek ways of paying our common workers for the city of Homestead. They also suffer along with citizens who have high electric bills. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wumble. Appreciate it.
Next, we have Cam, C-A-M.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Hello, everybody. Hello, council and attendees. My name is Cameo Parrish. I live at 25320 Southwest 137th Avenue. I hope at this point in time that no one is against body cameras. This is absolutely about protecting the people. And no, we don't just want to get police officers that is going to protect you to shoot back. That's the problem now. Now, like one lady said, she said that this is the era, this is the time where everything is on camera. We all know that. With that being said, the time and the climate is now for body cameras. The future of Homestead is at stake. Body cameras, they protect us all, including the good officers, and they assist in weeding out those behaviors that go against what is just. Please approve the body cameras, purchase, and usage. Take pride in justice. Please stand on the right side of history. As you know, this is the exact same petition that I gave to you guys 2 weeks ago. And the reason why I did the same thing, because I wanted to resonate in your soul and your spirit as you go forward today. This is the time. We don't want to look at Homestead when there's another shooting, there's an outcry from the people, and then now they're burning down buildings. I'm just being honest. They're burning down buildings, and the police will no longer have this reputation that you guys think you have. The time is now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
You're welcome.
Next, we have Liz Prado.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
We can, yes, thank you.
Hi, I was present for the last budget hearing, so I do have a couple notes after that one, and I've looked at the budget myself. My name is Liz Pradell. I'm a teacher and taxpayer in the city of Homestead. Why do you, as public servants, feel comfortable increasing police pensions by $60,000, but not allocating funds to ensure body cameras for the city of Homestead Police Department? In 2020, the pension was $605,000. In 2021, we're looking at $665,000. Overall, police funding, the budget is increased by $3.17 million for 2021 compared to 2020. At the first budget hearing, council members expressed concerns about citizens' taxes going up, which is understandable, considering 63% of Homestead is low income, and our school district, District 9, is one of the 3 districts representing high percentages of minority students. In 2014, Chief Al Roll, who is still the City of Homestead Chief of Police, was found tampering with the department, destroying public records requested by a cop he fired. In fact, there was a time not too long ago where the City of Homestead residents were not comfortable showing up to City Hall meetings at all, not anymore. The last budget hearing, new police cars, hiring new police officers, replacing 22 police cars because they're simply out of warranty, were among some of the programs council members, Mayor Losner, and the police department had in mind for the public's tax dollars. I'm not sure if the board is aware of this, but there's a petition demanding to make body cameras mandatory in the city of Homestead after situations like Edward Foster, may he rest in power, or my fellow constituent, Sabrian Bruton, who was beaten at the hands of 4 police officers. Unfortunately, since we don't have body cameras, there's no proof besides his hospital bills and the picture of what he looked like afterwards. God only knows what else the department has violated. The fact that the Community Redevelopment Agency prioritizes city aesthetics and $900,000 of land acquisition funds over civilian safety is beyond disturbing. Jennifer Bailey, I urge you on behalf of the City of Homestead residents to allocate federal funds for body cameras as soon as possible. And Sean Fletcher, I urge you to be up on local police brutality cases, as opposed to being uncomfortable with being recorded. In America, we are always under surveillance. When you step outside of your house, you are subjecting yourself to being recorded. So even after emailing every single person on this board, we are still screaming justice for Sabrian Bruton and Homestead locals. It's decisions like the ones you are all responsible for making that make or break people's lives. As a fellow constituent, Kim Hill stated at a previous city meeting, quoting Simone Biles, I got the weight of Black people on my shoulders, but I don't mind because I can carry it. Body cameras are moral, not political. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Kevin Chambliss.
All right, good evening, Representative Chambliss. Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. It definitely is a pleasure to be here. I've spoken to many of you individually about this issue and discussed definitely my support. At the police department, go ahead and get body cameras definitely way past time. I've also mentioned that in my new role as representative-elect, you have my support in helping to find other sources, whether it be grants at the state level or federal level, to make sure that we can pay for the body camera program. And so we've already talked about that, but I definitely wanted to go on record publicly and saying that I definitely support that particular initiative. One of the other things, Mayor, that I would also like to make sure that I mention, because as you know, I'm a youth minister in the community, and several of the people, the young people who've gone through my youth ministry are kids who have grown up their whole lives in the city of Homestead. I must say that what I can testify is that they honestly have lost trust in the police force based on the way that the city of Homestead in the past has dealt with this issue in general. And the defense of not having or not pursuing body cameras has only raised more question in their eyes. And I can testify to that. And that's of grave concern to me. I would hate for us, or actually it hurts my heart to see a generation of young people who begin to lose trust in law enforcement. When I grew up wanting to be a police officer. Like, that's what I wanted to be when I grew up. You know, my mama cried when I put in the application. You know, I backed out, right? And tried and sought public service in a different way. But that's what I wanted to be. But kids, through my youth ministry, that's the last thing that they would think about right now. And I think that we misunderstand the importance of public trust in those who defend us. That is vitally important. And I think that we should definitely take that into consideration as we begin to move forward as a community together in the city of Homestead. And we definitely, in this particular decision, need to just know that our children's eyes are watching us. And again, you guys have my support to seek alternative ways of funding. I'm here for you. I'm here to serve you and the residents of the city of Homestead. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Representative-elect Chambliss.
46.
Next, we have Tanji Sands.
Yeah. Hold up. Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can, yes. Thank you.
Hi. Good evening. I am a Dade County resident, a taxpayer, a homeowner, taxpaying citizen, and I just want to say that first of all, good evening to everybody, and I just want to say that I am in support of body cameras, and I agree with what some of the other constituents said when they called in. We are living in a basically like a social media world where everybody's on camera nowadays, and I don't see a problem with the police department having the body cams, because I think that the whole accountability, not only for the police department, but also for the community. Because if not, you're just going to have, you don't want to go with the he say, she say, you say, I say. The cameras are facts. It speaks for itself. So I think that it protects the police department as well as the community. And I just want to say that please, take everything that you can take into consideration to get the cameras for your police department instead of trying to find ways of not trying to have the cameras. Just go ahead and have the cameras.
We're living in times like this anyway. I'm not sure if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Oh, okay, I just wanted to make sure. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, the cameras really protect everybody. You know, I see it on the news, and I'm not trying to like detour the situation or anything like that, but I just want to go to what just happened the other day on the Metro Rail. These elderly people, the elderly man that was beaten, the young 25-year-old female that was beaten, that was wrong. And if they didn't have cameras on that Metro Rail, guess what? Nobody would have known who did this to these individuals. These people could have lost their lives. So the cameras are so helpful in so many ways. So please, whatever you can do, you know, get the grant, put that money into having cameras, body cameras for these police officers. You know, like I said, not just to protect the community, but to protect yourselves as the police department. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Christina Neptune.
All right, Christina, go ahead. Give us your name and address for the record, please. Christina, are you there or are you off?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
No, I'm here. Yes. Am I able to speak? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Great. Hi, how are you this evening?
Thank you.
My name's Christina Neptune. I was calling because I'm in agreement with body cam. I truly believe it's something that needs to be enforced for the safety of the civilians, for the safety of those, you know, that have went through police brutality and haven't had the opportunity to tell their voice, to speak their voice, tell their story, tell their truth. You know, not only is it a form of protecting the civilians, officers too. Not all officers are the enemies, but sometimes officers on a daily basis, they endure and they encounter things in the workplace that body cams are a necessity. But back to what I was saying before, with everything that's going on in the world and with everything that everybody has mentioned, we're living in a world where social media is at an all-time high. Not only is it at an all-time high, but just like others have mentioned, cameras, phones, all of that has played a part in a lot of cases. And it would really be beneficial, you know, for Homestead to have that, especially, you know, with the case pertaining to Crystal Foster's brother, Edward Foster, who, you know, was killed. And there's no proof. And this protects cases from lingering on. It protects families from mourning and grieving, you know, trying to get answers. So I truly believe this is a resolution that will seal the deal for everyone. That's pretty much what I have to say. I don't want to continue on, but I'm in agreement with the body cameras, and this is something that they need to have immediately.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Brandy Ramirez.
Hi, good evening. My name is Brandy Ramirez, address 2231 Southeast 1st Street. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I would just like to say that I am in support of the body cameras for the police department and for the officers. I support Homestead Police Department 100%. I have been honored to work there for 5 years in the past, and I've also had 5 years with Miami-Dade County Police Department. I definitely support law enforcement. However, it shouldn't cost taxpayers of Homestead. I am a resident of Homestead and my family. As you know, right now we're in COVID pandemic, and many families are without jobs. Many of residents of the community have always been promised by certain council people, I won't mention any names, who when they ran for their campaign, they said that they were not going to raise taxes, that they were not for that. So I'm reminding those council persons tonight, keep your promise. Do not raise taxes. Keep your word. I would like to thank newly Councilwoman Erica Avila for speaking the truth and speaking on behalf of us, the residents. This is not the time to raise taxes. Tonight, you heard from Representative Chambers. I would like to say thank you to him. He's already told you that he's willing to help and support this and look for funds. Also, I'd like to thank PBA John Holmes. He's representing the police officers. I was going to ask that question tonight, the same question that he said. Have you guys spoken to any of the officers? Have you spoken to anybody at the police department to see what they're wanting? If you're saying that you are for the police department, then we should be hearing from them. Not one officer has come to say what are they wanting for their department. They deserve our support. They deserve more officers. However, like they said tonight, the reports show that police department is doing a great job right now. I know it for a fact when I see multiple people that call for help, their response time from Homestead Police Department, no one else has that in the county. So I am here to say that we are supportive of the police department, supportive of body cameras for our community. Many residents have said that they want them. However, multiple have said don't raise taxes. Thank you, Mr. Shelley, for making sure that you put your point across, that you are there to not to raise the taxes. I asked Jennifer and Sean Fletcher to join you in this. Mayor, thank you for speaking the facts and the truth and for bringing forward what needs to be said in the meetings. Please remember, Council and Mayor, us, the residents, the taxpayers, we are watching, we're listening, and we're also going to be ready to vote. Please do the right thing tonight and review everything what you have heard today from other people saying that there's grants out there. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Next, we have Monica Moreno.
Hi, my name is Monica Moreno. I live at 1201 North Liberty Avenue, Apartment A. I'm a taxpayer in the city of Homestead. It should be no surprise who I am. I'm the partner/wife of William Robert Ray. Many of you may or may not know that Captain Ray was fired for quote unquote incompetence. He received one bad note in his file for not turning in something early on as a young supervisor. However, this came after he revealed some of the internal corruption to the city and the SAO's office. To Johnny Holmes, all I have to say is no, Alro has not done his due diligence. He does not deserve the title of Chief of Police. If you haven't heard, there's a multitude of files that the ex-city manager was in possession of. This is no secret because this was revealed by the city of Del Rey. These files conceal interactions of an old homestead and administrators of the police department. There's a large amount of corruption that has been ongoing in the city of Homestead, and the community members are oblivious to these interactions. There's a mismanagement of specialized police officers and the monies they have used previously in attorney's fees to conceal their interactions. I would like to see more concrete information on body cameras and some presentations, not just words. Where are the companies? Are they opening up with these grants with something potentially soon? And I would like to say that I agree with Mayor Losner with those retired individuals making more money than a full-time employee is just wrong. I have more faith in those body cameras being on officers than hiring more officers that the city is going to manipulate. And all I have to say for Erica Avila is no one has contacted me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Ileana Caban.
Yes, good evening. Thank you so much. I'm Ileana Caban, and I live at 970 Northeast 42nd Place in Homestead. And I moved into Homestead 3 years ago from New Jersey. I am shocked to see my property value for a one-family home. I'm paying now a year $6,000 almost just as much as I was paying in New Jersey. I moved here to Florida thinking it was going to be, in many ways, a lot more affordable to live here. In case you guys haven't noticed, Florida insurance, homeowners insurance, is going up this year. The cost of food, I spend easy 25% more on groceries since this pandemic came into existence. My husband, unfortunately, has COVID. He had to go to the emergency room. We're going to be faced with some medical bills that the insurance is not covering. To raise the taxes, property taxes, even $50 may not seem a lot to you, but for someone struggling day by day, it is a lot. I'm all for body cameras and police accountability. I think that's a wonderful thing. I just think that if you would sit down and actually do the job that you have been elected to do, there are a lot of ways we could save money. I mean, I would start with just basic accounting 101. Where is the money going? There's just a lot of waste that can be trimmed. I mean, look at that mall, the cyber library, the mall, all of these things that we as taxpayers see, and yet turn around and on our backs you want to raise taxes. I think it's another option also is how bad is crime in Homestead? The gentleman that spoke before said that we have one of the highest crime rates in the country. I highly doubt that. I feel very safe in Homestead walking around. I would really like to know what is the crime rate in Homestead that justifies 10 additional cops. And I thank you all and have a good night.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments.
Next, we have Crystal Foster.
Yes, Crystal Foster. You all know my brother was killed by one officer in Homestead who has killed 3 people and shot 7. And I am a little disappointed first with some of the people that are speaking. And if you were all paying attention in the last budget hearing, there was a police Homestead sergeant that was on the call and listened for 3.5 hours and stated that body cameras would not fix the issue. Also, Ms. Avila, I highly doubt that any citizen would say that they would like to speak to officers in privacy. That just doesn't make sense in 2020 today, especially with our minorities that are diminishing in the streets of Homestead. Next, Fletcher, if you are not sure how staffing works with body cameras, I am asking you to please do your job. You all had 5 years. You all had 2 weeks to get all of your notes together, and I am extremely disappointed how unorganized you all have been in this last budget hearing meeting. To hear the council ask questions on how body cameras work shows a lack of interest and an insult to the community. To have your police sergeant say body cameras is not needed is a disgrace to human life. You all have been hearing families cry for 5 years. If Florida City can get on, and I'm sure they have less funding, it shouldn't be a finance issue. And again, also, keep in mind, if you all had body cameras, there wouldn't be litigation on the city of Homestead like my family is going through right now with your city. And let's keep it also, I want Homestead citizens and everyone who is listening who is rooting for Chief Rowe and is a fan base of the City of Homestead Police Department, keep in mind that body cameras is an equipment issue. And like I reiterated last meeting, body cameras will not only protect the citizens of Homestead, but it will also protect your officers as well. Homestead citizens should not be afraid of these officers who are supposed to protect and serve the community. Body cameras will enhance police accountability and deter police misconduct. And it also will restore faith in the community. I am asking you all, it's not about a promise on what you all said when you got elected in. I am asking you all to take your councilman hats off. And if you have a son and a daughter, if your son and daughter was killed by an officer, wouldn't you want to know exactly what happened? Wouldn't you want to know what is the true story? Remember, footage does not lie. And I wouldn't recommend anyone to be in our shoes and any of these other victims' shoes who has been in the system of lost a loved one and don't know the answers to what has happened. So again, I am asking each one of you to have a heart And right now, we're not going to wait another year. We gave you guys 5 years, and most of the departments are on board. Enough is enough, and we are asking you all to please get body cameras on hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Foster.
Next, we have Eric Pettis.
Hello, my name is Eric Pettis. I am the host of the Chief Jimmy Brown Show, and I wanted to just chime in to say I've heard a lot of the comments, and one of the major things that I'd like to point out is that departments can use body cameras in an effective way for training and accountability. It's not everything is not an I gotcha situation. Just imagine officers that are going out to calls. An officer may have, let's say they handle 20 calls on a day. If supervisors have the opportunity to go and spot check those calls, don't wait for the complaint to happen. Just go and check the call that officer went on and work on training aspects of interaction with the community. Critique that. Use it as a tool for developing and training those officers, as opposed to looking at it as a negative, as that is somebody somehow going to do an I gotcha. And I think that Ms. Foster was clear in explaining that some of the litigation that may occur will be eliminated by that, having those cameras and having that transparency. And lastly, I'd like to say that the show that I do on the radio, Chief Jimmy Brown Show, is a show that came out of the 1989 Lozano riots, which the show was allowed to come on to give people the opportunity to interact with the police, which Chief Jimmy Brown was the major of the police department that the Lozano riots occurred in that area. Which is, akin to running a police department at that time. My advice is don't wait for Homestead to be on world news and have this information come where, this discussion has happened and we've ignored the opportunity to spend the money that's available for transparency. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mayor, that's all we have. And actually, Jimmy Williams, I'm sorry.
This is former Councilman Jimmy Williams in the City of Homestead. My address is not really necessary. Listen, I have been very proponent of body cameras, and then in looking at some of the interesting comments that I've made, especially from neophytes who have really no idea on what it would take to bring about change. The City of Homestead is a very progressive place. And what seems to perplex me is that I hear crime rate is down, response time is this, and then I hear PBA president that says we don't need it, body cams can't fight for me or save me. To me, it's all ignorance in terms of that. I believe that these are warranted. Body cameras are efficient. Body cameras are what's needed. Body cameras is a way in which modernized municipalities move, and also when we talk about it as a financial interest, every year when I was on council, we were always faced with a budget gap, a budget deficit. And when the city manager brought back to us, we're not laying off anyone. We were able to keep everyone. But what was not being said is how we were able to do that. Now that the house of cards are falling, now that that station has been built and complexities of financing that it seems like only one person knows how to really describe exactly the entanglements of what we have ourselves into as it relates to downtown. It is disheartening to hear on one avenue that, I'm wrestling with this. I can't, I don't understand. I just don't know. And just the vacillating in which some of the positions of the council persons have not been able to really articulate any kind of solvency or any kind of other things other than talking about, well, the grants here and grants there. I think there's been proper solution. And I agree with some of your statements. I agree with the vice mayor's statements. I even agree with some of the sentiments of the other persons who have come on and voiced their concerns. We can make every excuse in the book of why not to do what. But I've learned one thing about the city of Homestead. We'll find money when we want to find it for the necessary things. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Appreciate it. Does that complete the list of speakers in line?
Yes, Mayor, and I would like to ask whoever already participated to please lower their hand so it avoids confusion in the next items. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you. We'll close the public comments then. And I want to go back and address something that was said early on in the statements and some of the conversation we've had. I don't want to be construed as saying that there have not been hard budget cuts made already to come to this point tonight. That is absolutely not the case. Now, that has been alleged that is the case, that sufficient cuts weren't made or an effort wasn't made, and I will say that is absolutely not true. And I'd ask our city manager to chime in and kind of summarize the areas where cuts have already been made and some of those amounts for us, so that we're very clear that we're not sitting on our hands and are doing our jobs to take a hard look and sharpen our pencils on this budget.
Mayor, I can respond to that. There's been $1.8 million of cuts that we have made for this budget. I can give you a summary of where that's come from. It's come from many different places in the general fund, but to summarize and to kind of categorize where the monies came from contingency, $116,578. Special events, marketing, travel and training, some of the things that have been mentioned tonight, $136,531. From professional services, consultants, public relations, $229,631. Projects and CIPs, $575,227. And we have also cut temp positions, we've frozen positions, and there's been reduced pension costs for $504,148, and fleet-related repair savings because of the new police cars that have been purchased, $269,247, for a total of $1,831,362.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. And someone touched on the increase in the amount of allocations to the police pension. You need to understand that those payment amounts are a function of salaries already paid, which is also reflective of overtime pay that's been incurred over the past year. So it's and some of it is contractual liability having to do with the guaranteed return on that pension. So I want whoever made that comment and everyone else to be really clear that we didn't just say we're giving another $600,000 in pensions into the fund. That is an amount that's been determined by market performance, salaries, and overtime, and prior contractual obligations. It's not just a whim. Those are items that we were required to fund. So I don't want anyone to have the wrong perception about that as well. Mr. Roth, you had asked to reserve some of your initial time until after public comments. Are you prepared to go forward?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief. There's been a lot said. This is the third or fourth meeting that we've had on this, the second public hearing that we've had on this. And what comes to mind for me is nobody up here is against body cameras. Nobody's here against adding police officers to our city. I think the biggest challenge that we're all facing is where do we come up with the funds to do what we need to do, as I said in the previous meetings, to enhance public safety. There's a lot of issues that are going on in the country. There's a lot of problems that we're not going to be able to solve here tonight. It's pretty obvious that there are folks that are very passionate about the need for body cameras. I have that same passion. I think we do need to have some total transparency and accountability, but I'm also on the side of the taxpayers as well, that they don't feel that they should foot the bill for all of it. I think Councilman Fletcher mentioned that he met with some folks out in Northgate, and they weren't against a tax increase for additional police officers. I would kind of be opposed to increasing any taxes right now. Let us get through the next 6-8 months, year, see what really the climate's going to be. There's going to be a lot of financial issues for people who live in the city. I'm also aware of the potential of insurance going up on residential properties. That's a big burden. We don't take into consideration that cost as well. And one of my fears is that as costs go up all the way across the board, whether it be property taxes, insurance costs, grocery costs, I don't think the costs that citizens are bearing out is reflective of what their income is as well. So to me, it's a very challenging decision. We want to provide the utmost protection we can for the residents that live inside the city. Is body cameras the answer? I don't know. Is adding more police officers the answer? I don't know. What I do know is a lot of people are experiencing some serious financial setbacks right now. And I feel that if we raise taxes right now, even though in some opinions it's minuscule, doesn't mean that it will be a burden to somebody else out there. So with that, I'm going to just reserve, and when the time comes to vote, I will make my vote. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. It seems that was someone trying to chime in, or was that feedback I heard?
Mayor. That was me, Mayor.
Okay, now you're clear. You were very staticky. Vice Mayor, please.
Okay, sorry. I'd like to thank all of the callers during public comment who chimed in to speak. I was just sitting here listening and reflecting at the same time. And with Officer Holmes, he mentioned a lot, but what he mentioned that really struck a chord with me is who spoke to the police officers? Did anyone speak to the police officers? And I felt when he said that. And I apologize for not speaking to the police officers directly. Over the course of these conversations, we were engaging with staff, the spokesperson, Morales, and Captain Dijon.
Vice Mayor, can't hear you. You're breaking up. Can't hear you.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Am I better now?
Now you're better.
Okay.
But we missed the last minute of the last few sentences.
Okay, yes, I was saying that with Officer Holmes, he mentioned no one spoke to the police officers, and I apologize for that. You know, over the course of these conversations, we were engaged with Morales and Captain Dejan, and they had mentioned that the police department was never against body cameras. So to me, they were speaking on behalf of the police department. So I apologize if you felt that I slighted the police department, because that was never my intent. So having said that, again, I completely understand with everyone's position. I know this is an extremely tough decision. You know, as elected officials, at times, you know, we have to make bold decisions, and this is one of them. I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to keep kicking the can down the road. This is something that has to happen. I campaigned on not raising taxes. That was before Breonna Taylor. That was before George Floyd. The environment has shifted. And if there are any elected officials that are tone deaf, that stick their knee in the sand and do not move with the times, then I don't know if that elected official is as effective, not slighting anyone on council. We have to be on the right side of these issues. If there is any time to move forward with it, it is now. Because if it doesn't happen now, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. With the grants, we'll never have enough grants to fully fund this. Grants don't come in perpetuity. Grants may come every now and then to assist, but they'll never fully fund body cameras. And if we engage in an agreement and won't be eligible for grants for body cameras, I did a search as we were talking, and there are grants that we can go after that can assist in other areas so that we can repurpose or redesignate the funds for body cameras. Department of Justice, Project Safe Neighborhoods, Project Guardian, Project Safe Childhood. There are multiple grants that can be sought after to fill other budget gaps. So if we're going to do this, we're going to do it now. Even if we have to reel it back to 5 police officers and body cameras, it won't be a huge difference. With the 5 police officers, I believe it was $51.54 annually. With the body cameras, it'll be not much more than that. What was it again for the body cameras, Carlos? 5 police officers, $51.54. I know it's been asked and answered about answered again.
Vice Mayor, okay. For the 5 police officers and the body cameras, the way that it was presented with just the discounted contract rate, it's $51.54 for a property value that has $100,000 in values. And again, divided over 12 months, that's a little over $4. That does not take into account the administrative assistant. That's something that we are going to shift over. The amount would be slightly lower. I can recalculate that.
Can you?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we already have the calculation for body cams. I think she just wanted it again.
And I'm sorry, could you I might have missed the question while our speakers were off. I apologize.
No, because I know Councilman Fletcher earlier, he had referenced that in the Keys Gate community that they were in support of moving forward with the police officers, but not the body cameras. So with the body cameras, that alone, I just want to highlight that it's only a couple dollars more. So what was it for the body cameras alone?
The body cameras alone, $25.97 for $100,000.
$25.97. So it's not a huge difference. At our last budget conference, I mentioned, since we all supported this initiative, what are we willing to do to make sure that it happens now? The community can no longer wait. What can we do now? What are we willing to do now? As the mayor mentioned, I'm willing to pay into my health insurance. I'm willing to slash my committee budgets. I'm willing to slash travel and training. I'm willing to slash hardware. I'll put in the sweat equity to get the funds if I need it later. But that's what I'm willing to put on the table. To my colleagues, I ask you, what are you willing to put on the table? Are you willing to meet in the middle? What are you willing to present tonight in order for us to move forward? Is it five police officers and body cameras? Is it paying into your health insurance? If not any of that, what about a 5% reduction from all departments? We won't have to raise taxes. Not filling any positions. Let's get creative here so that we can appeal to everyone in our community, but more importantly, so that we can move forward with body cameras and at least 5 police officers. What are you willing to do tonight to make this happen, as opposed to killing this and saying, oh, let's wait. We've been hitting the snooze button for too long. The alarm has been sounded. What are we willing to do tonight? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And I would pose this question, and clearly Mr. Fletcher answered it at our last meeting, wherein his priority was new officers over body cams. And I think to properly address your question, maybe we need to hear from the remainder of council as to whether having a little of both is a must, or if there's one priority or the other.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Fletcher, Councilman Fletcher.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was double muted. I've been trying to bug in here for a few minutes. So if I'm looking at the document that was provided to us by city staff, the cost for 10 additional police officers was $51.14 per 100,000.
I believe that was for 5 officers.
No, in the document that's provided to me, it says 10 additional police officers.
Correct. The 5114 is for 10 additional officers. That is correct.
Okay.
So
it's just that it's almost the same amount as 5 police officers and the body cameras. The amount is almost the same. That's a confusion.
Okay, that might have been my confusion in my notes here tonight. Okay, Councilman, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to clarify. And let's make the state. I said last time I did say we need to potentially compromise, and I'm agreeable with adding additional folks. Just so everyone's clear as well, I have talked to the police officers, not all of them, but several, as we went through this process. And I can tell you that the police officers, all of them, none of them are against body cameras, not one of them that I've talked to. But I can tell you that each of them are taxed on a daily basis, going from call to call to call to call, and they need a little break. They need a little help in order to help stem that tide. Sometimes they're filling out the reports, late in the shift, after their shift, sometimes the next day. We need to make sure that we give the police the manpower to do the job in the city of Homestead. I am willing to go whatever we need to do on a personal level, on our council budget level, whatever we need to do to make this work out, to not increase the taxes on the citizens of Homestead. But I'm going to be remiss in saying that we have not raised taxes in the city of Homestead over the past 7 years, and I believe that was a disservice to the community by not increasing those things incrementally. When I ran for city council, I told everybody there may be a need to raise taxes. Nobody likes to hear that. I don't like to hear it. But sometimes the facts hit you in the face. So I'm willing to do whatever is possible, whatever is needed to ensure that we get the body cameras that are requested, and the police officers we need. And again, I stated in the last meeting, maybe we don't outfit 135 personnel with, or 120 personnel with cameras. Maybe we just do the patrol officers, the ones who are out on the road having those contacts on a day in, day out basis. That may save us some money there as well. We need to look at this because next year it's going to hit us again. And next year it's going to hit us again. We're going to continue on this pathway of depleting the city funds that to offset any tax increase, and we're going to find ourselves in an insolvent situation in the future if we don't do the right thing for this community. Again, I'm willing to do whatever needs to be done to make this happen. When does this rate have to be turned in to the county for approval? Is that Friday?
Shoot. We have to decide something tonight, basically. This has to be, it has to be turned in. So
for example, you could, in theory, calculate what the new rate would be for 5 officers and body cams, and that would be the rate, and that's what would appear on people's tax bills. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we would not go forward and reallocate dollars from other accounts and perhaps find ways to economize the camera system.
I don't know if I understand the question. Mr. Mayor, I don't know that I understand your question.
No. If, for example, and I guess going forward, since tonight is a drop dead date, if the council were to direct you to calculate what the millage rate would be for 5 officers and the body camera system, that's what we would have to adopt. And that's what would appear on our tax bills. But that is not to say that we are precluded next week from having a discussion about reallocating dollars that are before us in the budget now, such that the entire increase of revenue from the millage rate is not necessarily spent. We could throw it into a contingency account to roll into next year. So I guess what I'm saying is just because we enact the rate doesn't mean we have to spend it.
That is correct.
We're going to be taking it out of taxpayers' pockets, but not necessarily spending it.
Mr. Mayor, just giving you an example, you're correct. Let's say you base this on the contract that's been presented before you. We adopt the budget. That's the taxes that we start collecting. Let's say you agree to a different contract that happens to be less. You're correct. You're collecting the taxes based on the estimate that we proposed. How you end up spending that, because you may have other allocations, is totally, it could be totally different. Correct.
Okay. Very good. Now, and I don't want to get too convoluted or far out in the weeds here, but let's say we adopted this rate and our taxpayers got their bills based on that rate. And we can continue to move the puzzle pieces of the budget around and further reduce the cost of the camera system. I guess every property in Homestead gets a water bill. That's the only thing we all have in common. Not everybody gets a sewer bill and not everybody gets an electric bill, but everybody gets either a trash bill or a water bill.
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
Trash, yes. Trash every resident of the city.
So what I'm getting at is if we decided to rebate, we could go back and recalculate what the millage rate could have been and, for example, either send that taxpayer a check or give them a credit on a bill that we all have in common to cover that rebate.
Mayor, the only problem I have with that is that you're talking about two different funds. You're talking about the general fund, and you're talking about the solid waste fund, which is an enterprise fund.
So then I guess my ultimate question is if we went down that road of saying, hey guys, we over millage rated you, here's $32 back, that would just have to be in a direct payment to the record owner from the general fund?
You could either not use the funds, and like you said, it can go into fund balance, or because it was based on what was going to be used for law enforcement, whether it was additional police officers or body cameras, those funds could be used for other law enforcement purposes. So it's still the intent that it was for public safety.
Okay.
And then next year, you could reduce the millage rate. If you found that we could, that it could have been something lower, then next year you reduce the millage rate.
Okay, so we do have options available to us. All right, multiple options. We do have to make a decision tonight, but as to rate, but it doesn't preclude further budget adjustments. All right, council members?
Mayor, I just have a few more things to say, please.
Sure, thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you. I think at this point, it's all boiling down to it ultimately coming to a rate increase. And considering where the more of the cuts can come from, it does shift my focus on creating more business-friendly, creating a more business-friendly municipality so that we can increase our values and have more revenue from both the businesses and the city instead of having to raise the rate. I just don't see where else we can cut the fat or versus trying to redistribute the fat to other areas within our municipality. And what I meant when I asked to think about a time of adversity and trying to relate to that, it wasn't directed to anyone in specific, but rather to the public in general. So I wasn't meaning to offend anybody, but just speaking from experience and just trying to paint that picture for anyone who hadn't had that experience. So and I'm saying all of this because according to the Department of Economic Opportunity, the unemployment rate specifically for the city of Homestead, was sent to me by the city manager's office earlier this month, it went from 2.6% in January to 15.2% at the end of July. It's a huge unemployment rate increase. These are families in all of our districts. These are employees who were laid off due to county mandates for reduced capacity, which we are still currently under. Many of these businesses were barely making a profit at 100% capacity. So imagine that at 50% capacity, even now, that's being allowed. So I can't ignore this ongoing hardship on our business owners, for those who are receiving rent hikes because of the taxes already going up from their landlords. And, I agree. I think that we can look at the budget again and look at our internal departments and see, all the people that we are paying. We're paying people to manage and work with the public on new development, business growth, the CRA, code enforcement. Yet I hear time and time again how we are failing at some of the key concepts on trying to engage and promote a good communication between prospects considering our community for their business. We need to improve those relations. We need to improve those departments, and perhaps that does mean redistributing the fat instead of cutting fat. But let's see how we can create an attitude of let's see how we can do it versus no, we can't do it. And I think that in itself will help raise revenue and get us out of this COVID situation and provide the funding that we're trying to find for these programs, for the cameras and for the police department. And also to clarify what I was referencing about not having enough information of, it was simply regarding the direction for the grants, like the pilot program, the HIDA program as referenced by some of the commenters today, but also the requirements for those grants. I don't want to put us in a position where we're disqualifying ourselves by not knowing the guidelines on how to apply. And I specifically asked all those questions from our city staff about how to do it. And they said to me, well, how do you expect to commit a future council to a rate increase, especially in an election year, when I asked about the deferred payment options? So that's the information I was missing, and that coupled with the lack of feedback from the residents in our community on a topic that is so impactful for both the pocket but on the personal individual rights that some might feel that they have. So I need to hear more voices from a city that has close to 80 or over 80,000 residents. And if everyone wants the cameras, then putting it on the ballot next year shouldn't be a problem, and letting the people decide for themselves. So, and at this point, I think we should call the question.
Well, and thank you, Councilwoman, and that's kind of where I was trying to go, that let's get something finally out there on the floor to debate and, you know, arrive at whatever the ultimate number is. So I would ask for a motion to be made with respect to the establishment of the millage rate.
I'll make the motion to set the millage rate at what it was originally.
Well, but we've got to, you have to take into account the library as well, correct, Mr. Perez?
That is correct. I believe what Councilwoman Alila is referring to would be the millage rate of 6.2055, which would be the 5.9215 that we have traditionally assessed, plus the 0.2840 for the library tax.
Is that your understanding, Councilman Avila?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion to set the rate, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Perez, the millage rate for the coming fiscal year at 6.2055.
That is correct.
All right. That is your motion, Councilwoman?
Yes, sir.
Do we have a second? I'll second that motion if no one else will.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Shelley. Have any further questions or comments on that motion? None appearing, then let's have a roll call vote on the motion to set the millage rate for fiscal year 2021 at 6.2055. But before we go forward, do we need to reread the statement, Mr. Pearl, that inputs the new figures?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just about to cut you off. I think Carlos has the figures handy.
Well, shouldn't we wait till after the vote?
We have to read the statement ahead of the.
Oh, we do?
Of the resolution. Yeah.
So you may have to do another calculation.
Okay, then I may have to be doing quite a few calculations tonight. Okay, give me a second.
He has to recalculate what's
Okay. Wait 1 second.
While he's doing that, I'll issue the disclaimer here that I failed college algebra twice, and that we are totally relying upon Mr. Perez's numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, I am ready. I am ready to read this statement. The City of Homestead's proposed operating millage rate of 6.2055, which is 0.2840 mils higher than the previous year's millage rate of 5.9215 mils, and the proposed voted debt millage rate is 0.4485 mils. The rollback millage rate is 5.5697 mils. The proposed operating millage rate of 6.2055 is 11.42% above the rollback rate of 5.5697. That's it.
Thank you. And you're good with those numbers. Okay. So we have a motion and a second to adopt the rate as 6.2055, which includes the reallocation of the library rate. Madam Clerk, let's have a roll call vote on that.
Councilwoman Bailey?
No.
Councilman Vaughn?
Yes.
Councilman Fletcher?
No.
Councilman Shelley?
Yes.
Councilwoman Avila?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fairclough Staggers?
No.
Mayor Lawson?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you.
Mayor, may I?
Yes, Vice Mayor, sure, thank you.
Yes. Now that motion passed, so I'm still present my question. What are we willing to do? I proposed a 5% reduction in from each department, as well as not filling any position that would provide money so that we didn't have to raise taxes. So now that we're not raising taxes, what are we willing to do tonight to move this forward? We talk about cuts, but I haven't seen anyone proffering any cuts beyond we can't do anything further. City of Florida City has a 3-year agreement as opposed to a 5. I am sure AXA will go for a 1-year deferred payment plan and a 3-year agreement as opposed to 5. Cut down the amount of police officers from 10 to perhaps 5. Phase in body cameras like Florida City did. They don't have body cameras for all of their officers, only for the officers on shift. Body cameras can't go in anybody's houses. That's against state law. So what are we willing to do tonight if we're not going to raise taxes? I put that on the table.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, I just wanted to point out with respect to the suggestion that every department cut 5%. For some departments, that would likely mean that people would lose their jobs because the departments don't have budgets other than personnel. And so many of our departments are short-staffed as it is. That would be an extremely difficult thing to accomplish. What
about 1%? Without slashing council's budget. Even after this, you slash my budget, I'm paying into my health costs because it's about leading by example. So it's not 5%. What about 1%? What can that translate into? I'm sure that'll pay for a couple police officers and body cameras.
Obviously, we'd have to look at it, Vice Mayor. We haven't looked at those numbers. But again, it would be difficult. I don't know what across the board 1% would give us. Maybe we could do some quick math right now when we look at that. But again,
I'm willing to be here all night if my colleagues are, because if it's that important for us, it will be irresponsive for us to say, oh, let's wait, but we haven't really fully done our due diligence and work to create opportunities to move this forward. The only individual I've heard about agreeing to pay into our health was myself and the mayor and slashing a budget. If we are committed to this, then we need to demonstrate our commitment to this tonight. So we're not going to raise taxes. Let's figure this out tonight. What are we willing to give up? And no disrespect to my colleagues. We've always been collegial and work together. Let's work together tonight for the good of all of our residents. Those that said the minimum, that said no to the increase, and the majority who we've heard that said that they were willing to increase their taxes. So we're going to be about our residents and responsive to the needs of our residents. Let's be responsive to all of them. And let's figure this out tonight to move forward. If it costs me making deep cuts. So let's make it happen tonight. I'm here because I have a baby.
But Vice Mayor, I'm here for the long haul too, but respectfully, I think it would be irresponsible for us to ask staff to make those kind of analysis tonight on camera, open-ended with us, as well as asking us to take a look at those issues tonight. Clearly, I hope I'm not misspeaking, every member of council has committed to finding a way to fund a body camera system and to hire additional police officers. They've made that commitment here tonight on the record. And if we need to schedule a big block of time on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday of next week to do that, I really think that is the responsible way to do that rather than on the fly here tonight. I mean, not only, you know, I've proposed, you know, the personal budget cuts and council concessions. I've also talked about some other issues that are I feel for staff and probably some of my colleagues are some really, really tough issues. And for me, it comes back to the advisability of sitting here and doing it on the fly tonight. But I will say to you, I'll say to you, Vice Mayor, and our colleagues, I'm committing to doing it as quickly as possible in a more appropriate format.
Mayor, I completely agree with you. You know, if it's rushed and it doesn't feel right, and I know that's a lot to ask for staff tonight. With respect to that, we've had this to consider for weeks. Calling for trim in the fat should have started with all of us who are saying lead by example. So I'm willing to meet again, to discuss this, to figure out how we can make this happen. If we need to give more time for staff, I am okay with that. But I think it needs to happen. If all of us are committed to this, like each and every one of us said, then let's fully commit to it. Give staff some time. If we have to meet on Monday to determine ways we can trim a little bit more.
Sure.
So if my colleagues are even interested in that,
I'll call the meeting. That's not a problem. You know, and you know, trying to show your cards or fold them at that point. But I do want to say this. I think at some of our early budget workshops, I used the words that there should be no sacred cows, and I would ask each of us to come into that future meeting and removing that sacred cow designation on every line in that budget with fairness across the board. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, Vice Mayor.
No. Go ahead. I'm waiting.
I'm done. I'm ready to. We'll call that meeting and begin to have those discussions.
Mayor, if I may, 1 moment.
Yes, Councilman Daly. Sure.
Just for the record, I am also personally willing to do whatever I need to do. I think I was one of the first ones that brought up cutting our technology budget. There's definitely a lot that we can trim, and I would love to see us have a meeting beginning of next week and continue the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Fletcher.
I think I was perfectly clear earlier when I said that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this happen. So next week, I would just offer that city staff from every department be there and willing to go to the 10th degree to find what we can do to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. And what we'll do is we'll have, you know, I guess staff and I will determine what day works as quickly as possible next week for each and every one of us to be in attendance. We all have our budget briefing books before us that were provided for tonight. That will be the baseline for that discussion next week.
Mayor.
Yes.
Quick question. Can Carlos give us an absolute drop-down date that we have to have this information by? I think that would be helpful in selecting the date.
Okay. If I can, can you mute that? Okay. My speaker. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, we can hear you.
All right. I'm sorry. No, yeah, we didn't have the speaker on. Okay. You have to adopt the budget tonight, and based on the decision with what you just did with the millage rate, you've basically unfunded a large portion of the funding. So we had funding in place, as the manager said, in forfeiture and in Speedway to cover the body cameras. We don't have to touch the body cameras. But for the police officers, you have to then cut the budget because you don't have the revenues to cover that. As far as you're talking about for 5 police officers, you're talking $753,000 that you'd have to cut elsewhere. And mind you, the police department is about 60% of the general fund's budget. So you're almost considering cutting in the department. You're trying to add people in. But you have to adopt the budget tonight. So without that revenue source, at least the police officers, that would have to be cut from the budget right now. And then at a later time, if we want to discuss where we're going to cut other stuff to cover the additional ones, but right now the budget has to be reduced because that source of revenue is no longer available, at least for the police officers. As the manager said, for the body cameras, you've got 2 other sources that we provided to the council that could be used, so we don't have to touch the budget for that. But for the additional police officers, we have to cut the budget down.
Mayor, if I may.
Vice Mayor, yes.
So with that, since we money for the body cameras, can move forward with that and then have further discussions on how we can increase the police officers. Since we have the money, it won't cause an increase in the taxes for at least the body cameras. So I propose the funding that was referenced tonight, the HMS funds as well as the forfeiture funds, we move forward with that for body cameras and come back to the table to see how we can increase police officers. So at least we move forward with one.
Right. I understand what you're saying. I guess, and I guess I would look to Matt or Mr. Perez. Procedurally, would that be something that would be appropriate to do now to have a vote on the allocation of those monies toward the purchase of the body camera system?
You can direct us if that's what you want. Again, since the funding is already appropriated in those other funds, even though it's contingent, and the direction that you've given that that's the funding that you want to use, those funds can be done administratively later. But I need to provide you what the amended budget for tonight is for the general fund. I have to cut it because right now it includes $1.5 million for the police officers. I would at least have to cut the budget by that amount. And because you reduce the millage rate to 6.2055, that also affects the CRA because now the CRA is losing some of the TIP monies as well. So I would need, you give me some direction, but I would need a few minutes to recalculate those so that the ordinance for the new budgets can be read.
If I can just chime in for 1 minute there.
Sure.
And Carlos is absolutely correct. Now, with approving the millage rate that just was proposed, we're cutting the police budget. Because when I looked at the police budget and I met with staff, I asked, well, why are we increasing here in police pension? Why are we increasing here? And what is this? Account 3130, special departmental supplies for $75,000, $80,000. That was all with the understanding that we would be increasing the millage rate. So now we're slashing the police budget as a result of what we've done here tonight.
Well,
So it's
but-
very frustrating.
But wait a minute, Vice Mayor. Let's not go off into the land of being accused of defunding the police.
Well, no, no.
As I understood it, the proposed rate was to cover, in effect, the cost of the body camera system and 10 new police officers. So while, yes, at the first level of analysis, you are cutting the proposed police budget, you're not cutting the existing police budget.
Right. I wasn't asserting that we're defunding the police.
No,
like
I just want to be clear for people watching out there.
Yeah. Yeah, no. We're not defunding the police.
Where
So
the adopted rate
I would like
prevents
to,
the high.
so I would propose that we move forward with the funding that we have, give staff the direction to move forward with that. But in addition to that, to negotiate a 3-year contract with Axum, just like Florida City did. Don't lock us into 5 years. A 3-year agreement with a potentially deferred first-year option if possible. And then I still want to come back to the table because I am committed to increasing the amount of police officers. I share in Councilman Fletcher's concerns with that, and I still want to have conversations about what we can do to increase our police force because I am still as equally committed to that. So tonight, there's no increase in taxes. We can move forward with body cameras, and we can continue to work on increasing our police force. And I think, although it's not a complete win-win for the entire community, it is a good start as we continue conversations, very immediate conversations about increasing our police force.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll defer to the rest of my rest of council on this as well. I'm still in the position of leaving it to the voters and putting it on the ballot for next year, and I don't see the need to rush into this tonight, but am I understanding correctly that we cannot have that meeting date that you referenced?
Well, it seems that thinking through it with what our finance director has advised, well, and some of the twists and turns, is that if we direct staff to go back and get some numbers, for example, on the thinking of the vice mayor, for the 3-year initial contract, that will change the numbers that would need to be reallocated within the budget. If the council were inclined to allocate the motorsports money and the forfeiture funds toward cameras, it would potentially not be the amounts we've talked about, which would result in extra money, potentially not extra money, but a different amount that we would need to go looking for in terms of cuts to fund additional officers.
Okay.
Is that a fair?
I'll defer to the majority. Yes.
Mayor.
Yes. Is that helping, Shelley? Yes.
Yes, it is, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
As I stated earlier, I mean, I'm not opposed to this, methodology that looks like we're pursuing at this point, which is using existing funds for at least year number 1 so that taxes don't have to be raised. But I do think that as we're talking about, moving on to the police officer issue already, there still is, whether it's a 3-year contract or a 5-year contract, if we don't find additional dollars in our budget next year or the year after, then at that point, if we already entered into this agreement, we have to raise taxes or we have to raise the millage rate potentially next year in order to honor the commitment that we made. So I think there's still some work to be done as we plan out, a responsible solution. And I think that's something that we all need to be realizing, that if that's the rate we go, the majority is going to have to agree to raise the millage rate at least next year if financial conditions don't change. or if we don't find a way to save some additional dollars going forward. So, you know, I'm all supportive of trying to move forward with it. You know, if that means this year we can start the program. Obviously, there's still some steps to be taken here. I still would like to have some additional discussion when we get to that point about the contract for the cameras themselves, as far as, you know, are we going to bid it out? Are we going to make sure we have all the options on the table, both as terms of time, you know, as the Vice Mayor points out, the length of the contract, the cost of each camera, the camera company, you know, all of those things. I think when we get down to actually making the decision on the cameras themselves, I think we'll have plenty of time, and hopefully we'll have plenty of time to vet out and have that discussion to make sure that we're getting the best product possible for the best price possible, which will again help us on the budget side. But, and one last thing is, while I have the floor, I mean, I did have lengthy conversations with staff about, you know, how do we save these dollars? And I think what I quickly found out, and hopefully staff can come up with some additional solutions, but it takes cutting a whole lot of things. I mean, a lot of core substantive city functions, including employees, to save or to raise, you know, $500,000, $1 million, or in the case of police and body cameras, you know, potentially $2 million, is quite a huge undertaking. And the amount of things that had to be shut down, closed, and employees laid off was quite substantial. I found out pretty quickly, because some of the things I thought would save hundreds of thousands of dollars ultimately did not save nearly as much as I thought it might. So I do know that staff's going to have a huge undertaking in trying to find enough monies. I'm all for trying to lean the budget up, but at the same time, you know, if we can't cut enough items to get to our goal, then at the same time we're just cutting for the sake of cutting. And so I think, you know, we need to make sure as we go into this that we're able to get to the goal, whichever goal it is, you know, versus willy-nilly finding ways to save $10,000 here and $5,000 there. And at the end of the day, we saved $200,000, but we needed to save $800,000 in order to fund our goal. So just, again, food for thought as we move down this pathway going forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Appreciate it. Thank you for your experience. So at this point, we've adopted the millage rate, and we're committed to having staff get some numbers for us and come back as quickly as is advisable, and where they have those numbers in place to begin looking at additional budget issues. So,
Mayor?
Yes, Vice Mayor.
I would like to proffer a motion to move forward with using the forfeiture and the contingency funds from the Homestead Miami Speedway to move forward with the body cameras. And as Councilman Shelley said, to negotiate the contract for 3 years as opposed to 5, and then continue having conversations about who we ultimately select. I know Axum has over 70,000 agencies. Florida City has Axum, North Miami. Well, not North Miami. There's several cities in Miami-Dade County. So I know they're a reputable company, but move forward with the funds that we have tonight and continue to work through the terms of the agreement, and then have very early conversations about how we can potentially increase the size of our police force. In doing that, we did not raise taxes tonight. We moved forward with body cameras, and we continue our conversations early on about increasing our police force moving forward.
Do we have a second? Councilman Shelley.
Well, I just wanted to clarify, or wait, if you want to get a second first, then I guess I have discussion on the motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Councilwoman Bailey. And to restate, the motion is to allocate the recurring revenue from the Homestead Motorsports Complex and the approximate amount of $400,000 together with the available balance of the forfeiture funds to fund year 1 of the body camera system, which includes 1 civilian and 2 sworn officers. So, Councilman Shelley?
All right, because that motion is a little bit different. I guess that's my clarification. So if that's the motion ultimately that we're going on because that was my concern. I'm perfectly fine with earmarking those dollars as allocated for body cameras in this budget cycle, and then moving forward with how to implement that going, whether it be the length of the term of the contract and all the other details that go with it. What I was concerned about is specifically requesting a 3-year contract, because what I don't know, and I can't remember from the last discussion, was whether or not the price of the cameras were, amortized over a 5-year period, and such that they actually were cheaper per year, where if we go to 3-year, the cameras and the services may still cost the same amount of money and ultimately be amortized over a shorter period of time, making the overall yearly expenses higher. So I think those are things that we need. So before we commit to a time period, I think there's more information that I would want. But as far as moving forward with earmarking those particular funds for body cameras, and then moving that process forward, I'm okay with that. So that was my clarification to make sure I understood what we were directing staff to do.
Yes, through the mayor. I guess I would have spoke a little bit more afterwards, but that is my motion.
Great. I just wanted to ensure that everything was encompassed and we were all clear.
Mayor, one last clarification though. So your motion was for the 3 years, or the motion was what the mayor stated?
What the mayor stated.
Okay. All right. I'm on the same page. Thank you.
Okay.
To dedicate funds.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Well, I'm on the same page. Thank you very much.
All right. Councilman Roth.
Thank you. As I stated earlier, I'm sure all of us are in favor of and support of body cameras for our officers, but I have a problem with taking the whole batch of money and applying it to one program and not adding police officers. There's got to be a compromise somewhere. If we're going to work this hard for the body cameras, we also have to work hard for the police officers. I'll leave it for further comment. Thank you.
And I'd ask the attorney to jump in, I guess, procedurally, but I guess my perspective on that, Mr. Roth, would be if there's any way to unwind that prior motion adopting the millage rate and build in some cushion, because, I think it was stated very well a few minutes ago. It takes a lot of cutting to pay for 5 officers. 10 officers with all of the equipment were, in round numbers, $150,000 a year. So 5 officers, you're talking about finding $750,000 additional dollars above and beyond that same amount, more or less, that's just been allocated to the funds we now have in hand. That's a lot of money to find without an increase in the millage rate.
Well, I agree on that, and it's the commitment that Vice Mayor is making, and I'll make the same commitment to cut where we can cut in order to achieve both goals. So I think it's a little premature to allocate this money for 1 year when we don't know what the true costs are going to be, as Councilman Shelley said, as far as the time frames involved. Are the cameras going to cost us the same in 3 or 5? But if we allocate this money right now, then we're shortchanging public safety by not adding manpower to our force. So there has to be a way for us to figure out the whole package versus part of the package. I'm all for body cameras, but I'm also for manpower. We need both. I don't think we succeed anybody by only adding one program, and not adding the manpower that we need to the police force. So I don't know what the answer is going to be, but I think it's premature for just to earmark monies for one program and not the other.
Thank you, Mr.
Through
Roth.
the mayor. Through the mayor.
Vice Mayor, yes.
Yes. Councilman Roth, I've been trying to compromise all night, trying to come up with different strategies. I know there's a motion and a second on the floor to move forward with that pot of funds. What you can consider is, since you were on the prevailing side of the vote, you want to reconsider your vote to only increase the millage rate for police, for added police officers only, perhaps now to 3 as opposed to 5. I think that's a compromise, but that may be the only option at this point if you want to reconsider your vote, and you can since you were on the prevailing side. And we just move forward with the motion and second and a vote on the floor for the body cameras. So I think that's a compromise since the Keys Gate community and the majority of the delegates were interested in increasing their taxes for public safety and police officers. So that is what I have to offer as a compromise.
Okay. Is there any other member of council who would like to speak on the motion that's on the floor before we have a vote? Okay, Madam Clerk, let's have a roll call vote on the Vice Mayor's motion to allocate those funds, to dedicate those funds for the body camera system.
Councilman Shelly,
Yes.
Councilman Fletcher,
Yeah.
Councilman Ross,
No.
Councilwoman Bailey,
Yes.
Councilwoman Avila,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fairclough Staggers,
Yes.
Mayor Losner.
No.
The motion carries.
Thank you all. All right. I believe that the next item of business is tab 2, car number 2950, the adoption of fiscal year 2021 budget. That's you, Madam Manager, or Mr. Perez?
It's not to read the item, no?
Mr. Mayor, can I read the title, please?
Oh, sure.
Sorry.
This is an ordinance, the second reading, and it's an ordinance of the City of Homestead, Florida, adopting the budget for each of the several funds and departments of the city for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2020, ending September 30th, 2021, approving capital improvement plan, providing for repealer, severability, and an effective date.
Thank you. So we have the budget before us, and I guess implicit in that would be the allocation that was just passed as to the forfeiture funds and the stream of income from the Homestead Miami Speedway. Council, is there any further from staff? Carlos? Okay.
I'll read the item for the budget, Mayor, because the number has changed, and then I'll turn it over to Carlos.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. This is item number 2950, adoption of the fiscal year 2021 budget. Staff recommends that the mayor and council adopt the proposed budget for several funds and departments of the city of Homestead for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2020, and ending September 30th, 2021. The total fiscal year 2021 proposed budget is $193,198,509 in revenues and expenditures approved on first reading. Well, it wasn't, but this is second reading. This is the second budget hearing. And I will now turn it over to Carlos.
Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
Mayor,
I think I'm having technical difficulties here, but I want to just clarify. Was the allocation for the designation of those funds for public safety or specifically for the cameras? And I'm sorry that I didn't clarify that before. And is it too late for me to reflect my motion differently?
So I think I can answer your first question, and I'll defer to our attorney for the second.
Okay.
I understood it, and I think as it was stated, is that the allocation of the motorsports revenue and the forfeiture funds would be for the fund acquisition and funding of the body camera system for year one. And Mr. Perez is shaking his head yes. Is there anyone in disagreement of that properly characterizing the motion and the basis for their vote, other than you, Councilwoman. All right, so, Mr. Pearl, would you like to address the Councilwoman's the second part of her question, or her second question?
Certainly. Councilwoman, if your intent is that it's not to be earmarked specifically for the body cameras, but rather for public safety in general, more broadly, or to the police department, without that restriction, then you could proffer a motion for reconsideration and see if your colleagues would like to unwind what was just done, in which case you could, and if they were to approve the motion for reconsideration, you could proffer a subsequent motion to keep the categorization of those fundings more broadly in the public safety arena and not specifically earmarked for those. As long as Carlos and I are not running afoul of any Carlos's accounting principles.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, would it still pass even if I just reflect as a no?
The motion was specifically for an allocation for the body camera system, not the more broad public safety. So, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, it would need to be a motion to reconsider, and if that passes, then there would need to be a motion to define it as public safety?
Correct, Mayor.
Okay.
So I'll make the motion to reconsider. I feel it's having it on the general umbrella like that, it gives us more flexibility on being able to meet at a table and have the discussion, and because I'm still in the position of bringing the camera topic to the voters themselves, and I think that gives us the opportunity to do so. So I apologize for the delay in that comment.
In the forum under which we labor, hopefully tonight for the last time, hint, hint again, it's an easy situation to be in. So do we have a second to the motion to reconsider?
I'll second that, Mayor.
All right, we have a second by Councilman Roth. Any further discussion from council? Okay. Sorry, did I catch someone trying to jump in there at the last moment? Okay, so let's have a roll call vote on the motion to reconsider.
Councilman Shelley?
Yes.
Councilman Ross?
Yes.
Councilwoman Bailey?
No.
Councilwoman Avila?
Yes.
Councilman Fletcher?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fairclough-Staggers?
No.
Mayor Losner?
Yes.
The motion carries.
All right, so now, Councilwoman, your motion with respect to the utilization of the Homestead Motorsports Speedway revenue for the coming year and the available balance of the forfeiture funds.
Motion as stated.
All right, to be allocated toward public safety considerations.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Pearl,
that is my motion.
Are you comfortable with that characterization?
I'm comfortable with the characterization. I just want to make sure that from Carlos's standpoint, where he's appropriating the money, that we can still cover everything. So if Carlos can just chime in.
Yeah, it's not good. That's not going to make a difference.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Through the mayor, if I may, I don't understand what's not going to make a difference. What's not going to make a difference?
Whether it's for basically for the body cameras or for other law enforcement, it's going to be within the police budget where these costs are appropriated. The funding source is coming from Speedway and from forfeiture funds to cover those costs.
Okay.
Ultimately, the council can decide, and you've given yourself the flexibility as to whether it's specifically for body cameras or for other law enforcement purposes.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Okay,
Well, yes,
so
it's in the police budget without a specific earmark.
right. So for tonight, can we decide where that money is going? So it's going to be in the police budget, and then what? It's just there for who to decide. So what's the plan? Is it to bring in one police officer and half of the body cameras? I think we need to make a decision tonight. We have been at this for so long, and to keep kicking this can down the road is just unconscionable for me. So we need to have some type of determination tonight on what we're going to do with these funds. If we split it, go half and half, bring one police officer or two police officers, but we need to do something tonight for the entire community. We haven't raised taxes. We can bring 80 body cameras, one police officer. So it's a win-win for everybody until we move forward. But we need to do something tonight, because we've had these conversations for so long, and to take no action on either, but just to leave a pot of money floating there, I think is irresponsible. So all of you committed to body cameras. You said you commit to it publicly to the community. So we need to move forward with at least some portion of it tonight. This is ridiculous to have money just earmarked floating in the air. And then who decides and when we've been at this for so long. So let's discuss tonight what we're going to do with these funds. You said find the money. We found it right now. We found the money. Let's decide what to do with it right now, tonight.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Fletcher?
So I'm in agreement with Councilwoman Arnside that we need to make a decision tonight. I believe that in recognition of everyone's effort, and we've all put a lot of time in this over the past month and a half, and I believe we need to look at putting the cameras on the minimum amount of personnel, police officers, not supervisors, and then also see what those funds are available so we can add 2 or 3 additional police officers with this funding as well. With the mindset, we're still going to go back to the body to find other issues or other areas we might be able to be smarter on and more efficient with in our current budget with the city that can help us get additional funding available for these programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Fletcher.
Mayor.
Mayor, if I may.
Councilman Shelley first.
Thank you, Mayor. Although I understand why everybody, I mean, I see that there's a want or a need to make a decision tonight. I think that making that decision as far as allocating between public safety aspects, whether it be body cameras or additional police officers, is really somewhat of an impossibility, because ultimately we don't know what the final contract amount is unless we decide that we're going to go ahead and go with this 5-year contract. There's still a lot of unknowns about what the actual cost of these cameras are going to be, such that we then know what is the remaining monies available based on the number of cameras, the number of years, to then allocate toward police officers. And then also remember, we are dealing with half of these funds are non-recurring funds. And so to be able to try to fund cameras and police officers, both which are likely to be reoccurring expenses, I think is going to be difficult to make decisions on tonight, not knowing what the ultimate allocated cost of all aspects are going to be, and whether or not we make the final decision of being committed to either officers for a very, very long period of time, or cameras to potentially 3 to 5 year period of time with non-recurring revenue sources. If both of these revenue sources were recurring, then I think we could maybe somewhat venture into this realm. But I think there's a lot of other issues on the table that need to be fully discussed. Now, what I would prefer, though, I'm uncomfortable with having a pot of money allocated only to public safety. I think that there needs to be conditions placed on these dollars that ultimately the decision of how these dollars are spent have to come through the council as a final council decision, because I don't want to have monies be allocated to things that I was unexpected, or ultimately determine that we want to release those dollars for other purposes and maybe not fully spend them or whatever we decide to do. So I'm definitely uncomfortable with having this open-ended check sitting out there for police safety as a general topic. I think that it should be earmarked for either police officers and or body cameras and or police officers with the allocation of those dollars and to which cause made by the council. That I'd be comfortable with. I'm not comfortable with an open-ended letting ad staff or some other technicality all of a sudden allocate these dollars somewhere none of us intended. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Shelley.
Mayor?
Yes.
And just to reiterate what Councilman Shelley said, that's exactly the point of my motion, is to give us the opportunity to get back together and have that meeting that we tried to coordinate having, to get to a table and have those discussions where the council is the one making the decisions on that segregated pot of money for public safety. So just to clarify that, thank you.
Great.
For the mayor.
Is that you, Vice Mayor? Yes.
Yes. So perhaps Councilman Fletcher or Councilman Shelley, since, you know, you're uncomfortable with the money just kind of hanging out there and you were in agreement with moving forward with body cameras, would you like to reconsider your vote to revert back to allocating these funds for body cameras so that we have a definitive plan for these funds as we later continue to move forward with our police officers? Since we can't designate it tonight, let's just revert back to the previously passed motion of designating these funds for body cameras. Councilman Fletcher?
Councilman Fletcher?
Yeah, I'm not, I believe that we need to continue down the road that we started on with this second discussion. I believe that we have a professional staff that needs to go out and do their job and make the right decisions in order to ensure the city gets the best offer possible from these camera companies to make sure that we're not stuck, you know, on a 5-year deal. And that's how I feel about it.
Councilman.
You recognize me, Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Shelley.
Yeah, I voted for the motion, the last motion that was put before me. I mean, to allocate those dollars for body cameras specifically. I mean, I'm willing to vote on that motion again, but I'm also willing to vote on the motion as the current motion, which gives the council more flexibility and ultimately a decision-making process on an allocation. I do think ultimately there's not enough money there to accomplish both goals. I think we're going to have to end up making a decision at the end of the day anyways on one program or the other.
Exactly.
If the council as a majority wants that flexibility, I'm also willing to let the council have that flexibility if that's what the majority would like.
And I'd like to add, Councilman Shelley, that allocating these funds, if that goes forward, in my mind, that does not excuse us from the commitment to having the future meeting to again look line by line at the budget. This stopgap allocation does not relieve us of that responsibility. But I'll tell you, I am a little exasperated. We had 2 workshops
right
before the formal hearing for 5 to 6 hours. And I did that with an effort to have the conversations we're having tonight. So forgive me if I'm a little exasperated. A lot of you sat by mute as I plodded through the budget for 3 hours at a time. And I feel as though the conversation we're having tonight is a conversation we should have had in the past. You know, it's difficult. We're constrained to talking to each other in these public forums. But I believe we all had plenty of time to have these brutal conversations with staff, as I have prior to tonight. I'm not saying that none of you have, but the tenor of the conversation tonight, again, is I feel as though something that should have been done before.
Mayor,
I would agree with the comment from a minute ago that it may very well be that after we have those conversations, it comes back to we can fund one or the one and not part of the other, very likely due to the nature of those funds. But where are we? We have a motion before us to allocate them generally as public safety. And Vice Mayor, in my mind, that's the springboard to go forward and have that additional hard line by line meeting with new numbers for reduced numbers of cameras, shortened contract periods. And again, for me and respectfully, I would view it for myself to be reckless to try to cobble together that financial fabric tonight without having those new numbers before us. So, Vice Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councilman Shelley. We allocate these funds and just leave it up in the air, and then we get back to the table and say, listen, it's going to be one or the other. So I would like to see us move forward with this, and then, as you referenced, Mayor, still have those conversations about how we can adjust our budget and trim a little bit more, and I know it's going to take a lot, in order to see where we can find even more money. So, Councilman Shelley, I would like to respectfully request of you, since you went to the rally side of the vote and you were comfortable with moving forward with allocating those funds for body cameras, if we can do that and call for another revote, so that we can continue to go forward. Like you, Mayor, I am exacerbated.
Right.
We've had these conversations. So if Councilman Shelley, would you mind reconsidering to call for a revote?
Procedurally, I think we have a motion and a second on the table using the words public safety. Is that correct, Mr. Pearl?
That's correct. I think procedurally the way to proceed, if we wanted to go back to the appropriation specifically to body cameras, somebody could make a motion to amend the current motion. We would then hold a vote on that, on the amendment, and then if the amendment passed, we would vote as amended to put the language back as body cameras and not just public safety.
Through the
Mayor.
Yeah. I think I still have the floor. Did I still have the floor?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I still have the floor. So, I mean, we can get into semantics. We can say public safety and then still earmark it for body cameras. We still can do that. Public safety is public safety. It's just a broad term. If we want to move forward with body cameras tonight, I think we should do that. We've had these conversations. All of you said you were in favor of it. We found the money. The money is here. So what is this really about? Is it that, we're not for body cameras, but I'm not sure. But we found the money. We can proceed. We had a vote to move forward with body cameras with the money that we found. So if Councilman Fletcher or Councilman Shelley, if you can either move forward with public safety, earmark it toward body cameras, or consider the vote so that we can move forward, because we still have a council agenda to go through tonight.
We do. So I guess, Matt, someone would need to amend Councilwoman Avala's motion.
Correct. Somebody can make a motion to amend Councilwoman Avala's motion to change the language from public safety to specifically body camera related expenses. We would vote on that amendment if it were seconded. And then if the amendment passed, we'll vote on the underlying motion.
Mayor,
Councilwoman?
are we closing discussion on?
Wait, procedurally, I haven't released the floor because I have a question. So I still have the floor. So my question was, I asked either Councilman Shelley or Fletcher, would they be willing to reconsider and amend the motion to reflect body cameras because, Matt, I don't believe I can do that, correct? Matt? Is he on mute or he didn't hear me?
Good question. I think you may have stumped him. That's what the silence is about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I think, Vice Mayor, I didn't mean to take the floor for me. I think that, when I was asking Mr. Pearl, we've got the motion pending, and I think we were both asking the same question. Could it be amended? And I guess you were turning to either Councilman Shelley or Fletcher to make the motion to amend Councilwoman Avila's motion. Is that correct?
Okay, got
I think
it.
it goes on the same page. Mr. Pearl, are you there?
I am, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry I temporarily got dropped. But I heard what you just said, and you were correct. And rather than changing the prior vote, what we need now, we have a motion and a second pending, is the motion to amend if somebody cares to make that motion.
So I believe the Vice Mayor's motion or question was, given her vote on the prior motion, is she permitted to move that amendment to the main motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so if I am, since I still have the floor, I would like to amend that motion to reflect body cameras as opposed to public safety.
Right, so the Vice Mayor has moved to amend Councilwoman Avila's motion to change the language to specifically body cameras. So do we have a second on the Vice Mayor's motion to amend?
I have a question on procedure.
I'll second for
There's a motion in a second.
Right, we have a second on the motion by Councilwoman Bailey, but
Excuse me, Mayor, who
Councilwoman
seconded?
Avila has a question on procedure.
Councilwoman Bailey seconded.
Oh, I know that.
Thank you.
Oh, no, the city clerk just asked, sorry.
Oh.
Thank you, Mayor. My question on procedure was if we close discussion on the motion that was on the table first before another motion was made.
Oh. Did Mr. Pearl get dropped again?
No, I'm right here, Mayor.
Okay.
No, that was it's classified as a secondary motion, and it can be made the motion to modify can be made. We don't need to formally close discussion on your motion. So, Councilwoman, I think we have a motion and a second. You can have discussion. You can vote on the motion to amend up or down. If it passes, then the Councilwoman Avila's motion will be voted on, but with the amended language from public safety to body cameras, putting us back to where we started.
Right. So.
Okay, so do I still have the floor?
Sure.
Thank you. So if we keep it under public safety in general, and then we come back to the table to make decisions on how that is going to be allocated, does that not give us the time and opportunity to also explore the actual grants and what those grants are and the qualifying guidelines for those grants coming into the new fiscal year? And that was just a question for everyone's benefit, because I'm still in the position of leaving this vote in the hands of our constituents. But I just wanted to get that information with regards to having the grants and the information for the grants to come back to us, so we can have two pots of money to look at for the discussion purposes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. All right, so let's have a roll call vote on the motion to amend Councilwoman Avila's main motion.
Councilwoman Bailey?
I've been trying to unmute myself, and may I ask one quick question before the vote takes place?
Sure.
I felt like that was some kind of slot machine game, just pushing mutes and unmutes. And so I have one comment and one question. My comment is that I am also equally wanting to see more officers. I understand that we have an amazing response time, and we need to keep it that way. You know, I think of my school, there's a teacher that's doing really well as I'm putting more and more kids into her classroom. That doesn't mean that she's not going to burn out or that something is not going to happen. So that's my comment. My question is, if we earmark these dollars, would it strictly have to be for cameras, or once we're in discussions and we find out that we would be able to afford 2 officers and 60 cameras, would we be able to make those changes then?
I think, Carlos, can you address what can be spent based on the way that it's been earmarked?
Again, if you earmark it for law enforcement purposes, it can be for anything that's law enforcement purposes. The only benefit, one benefit of that is the possibility of with grants, if you're going after grants. If you've earmarked it for body cameras, that could prove to be, we don't know. I don't know, because we don't have a final answer on that. But we've said that if something's budgeted directly for body cameras, that may prevent us from going after certain grants. So that's the only benefit that I see. Otherwise, it really makes no difference in the budget. The funds will be earmarked in the police department only for law enforcement purposes. I think council's given direction that they will decide ultimately how those funds will be spent. So they always have another shot at changes this later. So
Through the mayor, just go ahead.
I'm sorry. So perhaps the safer route would be law enforcement or public safety, rather than a specific purpose within that budget category.
I understand that. I would like to hear, and I think that's where Vice Mayor is going as well, I would like to hear the definitive that the body cameras will happen. So that was why I was asking. If we find out that we could save some money with the cameras based on what we have available in those 2 funds, along with any possible grants, could we not then move part of that to officers? We make changes in the budget. That doesn't make sense to me.
Mr. Mayor, just a reminder that obviously confiscated funds cannot be used for labor. So the only money that could be used for staffing would be the recurring funds from the Speedway.
Thank you. Important reminder. All right, so I think we were at the point procedurally to have a roll call vote on the motion to amend the Avila motion, with the effect of an affirmative vote being that it was a specific allocation to body cameras. So the motion to amend prevails. So if we're ready, Madam Clerk, it's a roll call vote on the motion to amend the main motion.
Councilwoman Bailey?
Yes.
Councilwoman Avila?
No.
Councilman Shelley?
Given the wanting to leave as much flexibility as possible for grants, no.
Councilman Fletcher?
No.
Councilman Ross?
No.
Vice Mayor Fairclough Staggers?
Yes.
Mayor Losner?
No.
The motion fails.
So now we need a roll call vote on the main motion to allocate that fund that we've been discussing, the two pots of proceeds, for law enforcement purposes.
I have a question.
Public safety, I guess.
Mayor,
Yes,
I need,
Vice Mayor?
who made the second on Councilwoman Avila's, motion?
Was that Councilman Roth?
No, that was the city clerk asking who made the second.
No, I know. Was that you, Councilman Roth, that seconded the Avila motion to make it more broad?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, thank you, Mayor. So I'm just trying to get an understanding of what is the real intent here. If we said we didn't want to raise taxes, we didn't do that tonight. We said we're for body cameras, and we have an opportunity to move it forward. I'm having a real hard time reconciling what is this really about. So with this, if we earmark these funds, we don't know when grants will become available. We don't know when that's going to happen. So what are we going to do with this pot of money? And I don't feel confident that we'll be able to move forward given the conversation tonight, because it just appears as if something's not right. And now to say that forfeiture funds can't be used for salary, and it's just a lot of convoluted information here. And I don't have confidence that we're going to be able to move forward to appeal to everyone in our community with this decision that's being made. It's like all this wayward back and forth. So what's the real intent for this money? Because I have no confidence that there is a genuine desire for body cameras. Because resting on the availability of grants, we don't know when they're going to become available. So what do? Just sit on this money waiting for grants as opposed to being bold and moving forward? I'm having a hard time reconciling that. So if my colleagues can explain to me what is the plan to come back to another meeting, a 5-hour meeting, and talk about what we're going to do with $739,000, the $400,000 from the Speedway and $339 from forfeiture funds, to have another 5-hour meeting about that? Why can't we make a decision tonight? It's too much indecisiveness when we've had time to vet this. We've had time to look for grants. We've had time to look through this budget. We've had time to determine how we move forward. So another 5 hours is going to determine that if we haven't done the homework prior. I'm very confused.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Council, any comments?
Yes, just for the sake of transparency, Mayor, I'd like to say that I am in support of what my citizens and constituents are in support of. And so based on all the information that I've been able to gather over the course of all these weeks and all these meetings, I want to put the decision in the hands of the voters. So it's twofold. It's one on how are we funding the cameras and the police if we go in that direction, and two, is that something that the community really wants? And so back to my initial comments at the beginning, that is the lack of information that is causing me to now be in this position. And the grants, there was so much discussion about how there are grants and how Winter Park received so many grants, and the grants are going to be pouring out of the floodgates after all of this and with the new election year. And so now to have a position of we might not have grants, let's not count on the grants, that still puts me even more firm on the position of we are in too much of a time of uncertainty to be entering into contracts when we have a lack of funding on the state level this year. Next year, we're going to be having lack of funding on the commercial values. So it is a lot of uncertainty. I have lack of confidence in what the future is going to hold, but I am happy to put the money aside. Let's continue to gather information. Let's have the conversation on the table and earmark these funds specifically for the community or public safety. So I'm not against body cameras. I'm for body cameras if that's what my constituents want. And that's my opinion on the matter right now. Thank you.
Mayor, if I may respond.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Yes.
So if you, and through the mayor, and I'm just asking a question, I'm not being rude or anything or disingenuous, but you just said, and I didn't say that the grant funds won't be available. I said I don't know when they'll be available. If you are for body cameras and you want to put it into the hands of the voters, then what are we earmarking this money for? So that means nothing for body cameras? It's for public safety, just for police officers and not body cameras because you want to put it in the hands of the voters? So does that mean this pot of money that you all just voted to float in the air in the police budget? What is it really for? If you want body cameras to go in the hands of the voters. So what is this money for? Public safety? What public safety? Can that be defined? For those of you who support it, define that for me so that I have clarity and understanding. Because putting it in the hands of the voters, to me, translates into you don't want to use this money, any portion of it, for body cameras. So define public safety to me, and what does that look like with these particular funds if after all of these conversations, you still want to hear from the voters? What does that mean? Because I'm very confused. Cameras are a policy decision. We can make that decision tonight, as opposed to leaving this money floating in the air and then letting the voters decide in November about what they want. So what are we really going to use the money for?
Mayor, may I respond?
Certainly.
Thank you. I proffered to city manager I asked the city manager if we could, as a city, survey the voters somehow. And I hit a wall. So if anyone has a better idea on how to get the voters to give their voice without having to wait for the November election, let's hear it. But earmarking the funds and having the opportunity to talk about it later gives me the opportunity to have a say in that discussion and to have more time to figure out how to get the voices. And we have 80,000 people in our city. I've received a handful of emails. We've heard from a handful of people on comments. If I can hear from the city manager what are the options we have to get the input and the feedback, so that we have the opportunity to take that into consideration for the future discussion on how to allocate these funds and appropriate them.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Vice Mayor, I think
yes,
the conversation leading up, my perception of the conversation leading up to Councilwoman Avila's motion and her expression of concern about the tight earmarking, you've asked the question, what does that mean? And I'll only speak for myself, is I perceive there's a feeling on council that somehow, without raising taxes, the majority of council wants both body cameras and additional police officer. But we don't know how many officers and we don't know how many cameras. And I'm sorry, but I'm going to use the word again. I'm going to use another word, Vice Mayor, you're not going to like. I'm not going to be bullied, and I'm not going to be reckless by sitting down and being forced to make those decisions tonight. And personally, I've made myself clear that I don't think in this financial climate it is appropriate to deplete those forfeiture funds, a non-recurring revenue or source for recurring expenses. It's almost as if look, clearly everybody understands where you are. You want a decision tonight that this money is is used for body cams. But I think we've got others who want to find a roadmap to a couple of officers as well. And Mr. Perez gave us a good reminder tonight that, hey, whoa, wait a minute, let's hit the brakes. Forfeiture money can't be used for salaries. So that takes that, whatever it is, $80 or $70,000 off the table toward police officers, and only goes half the way toward body cams. So it seems that after we have all this discussion, that the fat trimming or the laser sculpting that we're going to do on the budget in the future and allocating these funds seem to really only be leading us back to body cams. But I think we need to be certain of that. And again, I said it before, I'm sorry. It's more and more exasperating for me, because I tried to drag you all to the table twice to have these discussions, and they didn't happen. And I'm not going to make a snap decision after being here for 4 hours already about some on-the-fly budget reallocation without having staff, have the numbers and have the figures in front of us. We talked, whenever it was, 2 weeks ago, a month ago, whatever it was, about saving money by buying fewer cameras. And then the discussion came to the point where, well, if we buy 113, we can probably get a better discount. If we have 113, that'll leave spares for those that go out of commission. Reserve officers can use them. If people who don't normally leave the station house have to go out into the streets on an emergency, there'll be cameras for them. So really, by playing let's make a deal with the number of cameras just for the sake of getting cameras tonight, really unties all of the methodical conversations we've had in the past. So if there was any doubt, I'm not going to tie our hands tonight to allocate this money that I don't even know is entirely philosophically appropriate to allocate to cameras, to allocate in cameras in full tonight.
Through the mayor, if I may.
Yes.
I apologize if anyone feels that I am being bullyish, because I'm not bullying anyone. That is not my style. And I'm not tying anyone's hands. That's not my style either. I just don't understand why we've had all these conversations. We didn't want to raise the millage. We are in favor of it. We found the money, and now we want to leave it in the hands of the voters when we are the policymakers. We are the ones that make the decisions ultimately, not the voters. I mean, we have a responsibility. We have a job to do. And why, if we couldn't use the forfeiture funds for positions, why was that disclosed after there was a 5-2 vote to allocate the funds towards body cameras? It's like, were we being misguided? Like now, we can't use it for that after a 5-2 vote to move forward to allocate the funds. So now that on the prevailing side, there was a vote to put this pot of money in the police department. So when we sit down again, what are we going to do with the money? That's what I'm asking. What are we going to do with the money? We get back to the table, we're going to be right here. There's nothing else to cut. What are we going to do with the money? That's what I'm not clear on. There was not an outcry about raising taxes. It wasn't. You probably received information from a handful of the voters, just a handful. I think this is ridiculous that we now have money floating in the air with no real intent to use it. So all I asked was, What are we going to do with this money? What is the plan? Are we going to sit down at the table and have another 5-hour conversation about what we're going to do with the money because we're committed to body cameras and police officers, as all of us equally are? What are we going to do with the money? Let the voters know tonight, what are we going to do with the money?
Council, any further discussion before we vote on the motion? Madam Clerk, a roll call vote on Councilwoman Avila's main motion.
Councilman Fletcher?
Yeah.
Councilwoman Avila?
Yes.
Councilwoman Bailey?
No.
Councilman Ross?
Yes.
Councilman Shelley?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fairclough Staggers?
A resounding no.
Mayor Losner?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. All right. Some time ago, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Attorney, before we went down this road of reconsideration, we had already read tab 2, is that correct?
We did tab 2, staff had direction. The motion that I'll need for the adoption is a motion to adopt the budget on second reading, subject to the direction that you had given staff, which, Carlos, if you want to speak to how you reduced the budget, we'll get the main motion. We'll make a motion to adopt it as Carlos describes.
Yes, Mayor and Council, specifically in the ordinance, Section 3, which is the adoption of the budget for the general fund, that will now be revised to $52,226,103. And that basically reflects the $1.5 million reduction for the 10 police officers. And then the CRA, which is Section 11, let that reflect that the new amount is $4,633,756, and that reflects the lowering of the millage rate, so therefore the TIF revenues that they have, and in return their budget is reduced by that amount. And as the city manager had explained, the total city budget would be $193,198,509.
So, Mr. Pearl, that is the motion we need on the floor for tab 2?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Do we have a motion?
Motion is stated.
Moved by Councilwoman Avila.
Second.
Second by Councilman Roth. Any further discussion from council? Any further discussion from council? Nothing further then, let's have a roll call vote on tab 2.
Councilwoman Avila?
Yes.
Councilman Ross?
Yes.
Councilman Fletcher?
Yes.
Councilman Shelley?
Yes.
Councilwoman Bailey?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fairclough Staggers?
No.
Mayor Losner?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Is there anything further from the manager?
No, Mayor.
Any further from the attorneys on the budget hearing?
No, Mayor.
Do we have a motion to adjourn the special call budget hearing?
Move it.
Moved by Councilman Roth.
Second.
I'll second that. Second by Councilman Shelley. Does anyone wish to be recorded as a nay vote on the motion to adjourn? All right, the special call meeting is adjourned. Let's give ourselves 5 minutes to come back and convene the regular council meeting.